would like to call to order this evening's Old Bridge, New Jersey Planning Board meeting, again for tonight, December 5th, 2022. And if we could all rise and salute the flag, please.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Planning Board has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement given the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement to the Home News Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. Ms. Cannon?
Here.
Mr. Lennon?
Here.
Mr. Mamakis is absent. Mr. De Palma?
Here.
Mr. Lauer?
Here.
Mr. Renna?
Here.
Mr. Petty?
Here.
Ms. Masella is absent. Mr. McIsaac?
Here.
Mr. Brennan?
Here.
And Chair Marucci.
Here. Okay, we have two applications on for this evening, and the first one being 37-2022P, and it's Segma Range Property LLC, and it's to construct a warehouse with office space along with other site improvements. Good evening. There it is.
Testing. Good. All of our witnesses are here this evening. Thank you. Nice to see you all. Mr. Gersberg. Please state your name for the record.
Ephraim Gersberg.
Have you sworn?
Yes, you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Just briefly for the record, your role in this project.
I'm the president and owner of 2020 Acquisitions, who's the developer on this project.
Great, thanks. You have some brief comments.
Brief comments.
Overall project, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Great.
So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to have this special meeting. It's greatly appreciated. Hopefully, we'll try to be expeditious in light of the fact that a lot of the testimony is similar in nature to numerous projects that you've already approved. This project that we refer to as the Gun Club, because it's the Old Bridge Gun Club. And first and foremost, I know it's an asset to the community at large, and therefore I wanted to kind of get off the bat that although probably have no legal responsibility to do so, we've tried and we are working with the Gun Club on a location so that they could be relocated in an area that's actually better suited for them, as well as larger and gives them more options. We've been working with the town officials and your elected officials to do that, and at the same time, and I'm happy to say, they've also been working on an alternative location as well. There's no, the idea is not to get approved and kick them off. This project will be one of the last ones being built along the numerous projects we're doing. But I wanted to very clearly say that although it's the greatest deal in the history of deals for them, they pay almost no rent, that we'll be continuing to do so, and ultimately we'll find a home for them. I'm confident of that, and they're doing a very good job on their own, but again, we have an alternative location that I've been working on with the elected officials to try to relocate them as well. So I want to make sure that's clear from the get-go. Additionally, this, we've been told about all the different off-site improvements that my company is going to be doing across numerous projects in Old Bridge. Obviously, the golf course, which if you've been there, we're basically hitting the final stretches of the last hole to be built is the 8th hole for some reason. And we are about to be done with that. Miniature golf will be being constructed in the beginning of the year, and the driving range has already been seeded, and we'll be getting that launched, all hopefully around Memorial Day. The course itself will probably be a little bit later because depending on weather, hopefully it's early spring would be great for us, but sometime in the summer we'll be launching the 18-hole golf course. It looks amazing. It really does. Spent a lot of time changing a lot of things to make it better, I guess. as I get there. The golfer in me wants it just to be better and better and better. So my team is telling me I have to stop with the bunkers and adding them, but it's going to be great. The one project, the reason I mentioned the offsites is the one thing that, if you're familiar, we'll point out today, is the White Oak Lane extension is being funded with a $6 million contribution based upon the approvals of this warehouse, this gun club warehouse, and that goes hand in hand. And we will hopefully be filing with the Department of Environmental Protection by early 2023 the extensive regulatory filings that need to be done in order to get White Oak Lane done. And we've been actively working with the township professionals to get that done as well. So I just want to let you know that we are working on all the offsites, and they are hopefully coming toward the end of this year that we'll be filing all the stuff. In terms of the Shade Tree Commission, we heard, we read the report that was issued. We are going to hopefully deal with that with the Township Council and the Developers Agreement. We've already, it's very important, as you have, I'm sure, remember, we're planting 10,000 trees, although we've not gotten any locations yet to plant them. We're hopefully going to get some leads, because ideally in the fall, in the spring, we'd really like to hit the ground running. I am taking it upon myself to look at every location within the golf course. I believe I'll be able to plant hundreds of trees on the golf course itself. You have to be careful where to put trees on a golf course, because besides ruining things, it's hard for grass to grow nearby. So you want to be diligent in where you put them. But I believe we'll be able to plant hundreds on the actual course. And then hopefully Gary will be giving us locations throughout the winter so that we can prepare for that. And we also are we already funded, I believe, Vina, we funded the $100,000 for the education program. And I'm assuming, I'll talk to Gary, but I'm assuming he's going to launch that in the spring, when the next time you could fund is.
Great, thank you. Questions for this witness?
Any questions from the board members for Mr. Gersberg?
Great.
Thank you very much, everyone. Really, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cahill,
We have to
We had to open it up
we
to
have
the
to open it up to the
public.
public as well.
apologies.
Okay, anyone from the public have any questions for Mr. Gersberg?
And just a reminder that it's regarding his testimony. That
His
he-
testimony
anything
only.
that might go to any future testimony, you have to hold on.
Come on up. Come on up to the mic.
My name is Frank Fahey. Frank Fahey. F is in Frank, A-H-Y, Fahey. And I'm a member of the Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club. That's why I'm here. We've heard all kinds of stories and rumors and assurances that we were going to be given a new location. And I came here to see what the status of that was and what the timetable would be.
I think Mr. Gersberg can speak to that as well. The length of construction by the time that warehouse is complete.
My understanding is that if the alternative site, I believe they're looking, the Old Bridge, your club is looking at a site. I'm not at liberty to say where that is. I think that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
You can ask.
Within the township?
I believe it is. I believe it is.
Yeah, one I know is within,
99% yes. But again, I have information that's not public that I think it's appropriate for
Yeah,
them to answer
agreed.
them. So ultimately, they're working on a site that is in Old Bridge, definitely in Old Bridge. And as an alternative, I'm looking at a site that's also in Old Bridge as a fallback for them. And that one is with the help of elected officials who've been very diligent and
Yes.
on top of me
Absolutely.
in terms of making sure it is done. So I'm confident in terms of timing, as long as they don't drag this out for years, they'll have time to build this, and that was always the plan.
What's the time frame?
To build this stuff
Yeah.
in less than 6 months.
The whole project?
less than 6 months.
Not my project.
No, your project.
My project or the gun or the alternative gun
I
club.
thought you were involved in our gun.
No. Ultimately, depending on the location. One I may be available, one I'm not. But if you're asking how long it takes for a gun club to get approved, to get once they have the place to build it, it's probably less than 6 months. I'm only looking at their plans and stuff, and I could tell you from an earth moving perspective, my opinion is of that. And it'll take me a lot longer than that to get my approvals for the DEP and other things.
Now, this project is the last in the line of them,
this
correct? So you're
project will
probably
not
looking
start-
at 2 or 3 years
This is-
before they would have to
At
find
least
a
a
landing
year.
spot.
At least, I would imagine that it's at least a year. I don't know
So
anything.
this would be the last phase of the overall development.
Correct.
So you'll have a home for a little while until the new location is found, but you'll have a landing spot.
And you're figuring maybe a year
For what? For me?
for the landing spot.
No, I mean, it could be, I mean, if they, I don't know where they are on one of them, and I think that's their primary one. They're dealing with that one. If they get that one and they could do it, move it quickly along, I think that it's a 6 to 7 month build. Didn't look like very complicated from what I saw of their plans. I haven't seen all their new plans, but it looked pretty straightforward.
And this is an outdoor facility only,
Outdoor
correct?
facility.
So-
I believe they own, don't you have
Well,
an
the
indoor?
indoor range is staying.
They already have an indoor range.
Yeah, the indoor range is staying where it is, yeah, the knowledge I have, yes. It's the outdoor range.
I'm talking about the outdoor range, and my understanding is that they, again, my understanding is that they plan on keeping the indoor one where it is.
Yes, that's
And
my
out-
understanding.
Yeah, they're not going to necessarily join them together.
So there's not a lot of construction on an outdoor range.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's berms,
Berms.
there are some stuff, environmental stuff, and then a little bit of a, it depends if they build a little clubhouse or they build the trailers similar to what they could do now. That's what I'm trying to say, it's not a very long process.
But it's in the last phase of development, so that,
Well, my side is, of this project, right, yeah.
okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Polacastro, your next witness?
Please state your name for the record.
Keith Cahill, Cahill, with the firm of Bowler Engineering.
Yeah, let me swear you in, then you can give your qualifications. Mr. Cahill, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do,
Thank you.
Your credentials, please, for the public and the board.
certainly. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've testified in front of this board probably 15 times in the past 2 years. I've been accepted as an expert in professional engineer and civil engineering throughout the state of New Jersey in excess of 100 different municipalities. It is.
Great.
Accurate. Thank you. Thank you.
You have some exhibits you'd like to enter in?
Yes.
Can
Can I carry this around a little bit?
Yeah, can we mark them?
Yes. Perfect.
This will be Exhibit A? Or A1?
This will be Exhibit A.
A1.
Oh, you're asking the wrong person for that one. I hope it's A1. I don't know. You want me to? Oh, it's titled overall aerial.
It's an ear.
There you go. I'm going to be quick on this too. So. Okay, I'm going to label this A1. It's entitled Overall Aerial Exhibit, dated 12/5/2022. Just for reference, I know it's a little bit difficult to see there, but you will see north will be to the right side of the page. Route 9 cuts this drawing in half with north to the right side, and then you can also see a couple other points. 516 running along the left side of the page in an east-west direction. This gives you an idea of where all the different locations and the projects are. You can see the golf course immediately to that. And further to the west is the gun club located here. So I just wanted to give the board a reference on where we're talking about. And it's this location here in the top of the exhibit to the west of the Glenwood Golf Course where it is. Along the east side of this property is the White Oak Lane extension. You also see Jake Brown Road, what I'll call the southern portion of it, tie into the south end of that site as well.
And Mr. Cahill, if you could, just for the benefit of the audience, if you could just hit the red dot where the site is?
Certainly. Gun Club is on this exhibit, again, to the top of the exhibit, and its north is to the right. And you can see the curved road in there is the White Oak Lane extension, And as I mentioned, the access to the gun club currently is through the southern portion of Jake Brown Road to the south of this site. I'm going to go to my next aerial exhibit, which this one's entitled Gun Club Aerial. Zoomed in closer.
Looks like the moon.
It does.
All right, so I'm going to mark this A2. And this is entitled Gun Club Aerial Exhibit, dated 12/5/2022, prepared by Bowler Engineering. And again, for reference, north will be to the right side of the page, and you can see the yellow line circulating the property. In general, in the center of the page is the actual existing gun club. The White Oak Lane extension is along the east side of the property, or to the bottom of the page, and the current access to the gun club comes off of the southern portion of Jake Brown Road along the south side of the property. What you can see here, this is a 200-acre parcel that's in the middle of a forest, I'll say. There's really distances in excess of 1,000 feet in all directions to any type of development. And this is a perfect location for this type of project here to redevelop the site. The site itself does have constraints similar to the other ones in terms of wetlands and some floodplains, which really drove how we had to design and lay out the site. But what you can see here, the site is out in the middle of nowhere, and we will be, as described in prior projects, connecting into White Oak Lane. You can see further across White Oak Lane is where the existing Glenwood Golf Course project is. So hopefully that gives the board an idea of what the site conditions are today. And then I'll go to my third exhibit. We'll label this A3, which is the Gun Club aerial rendering. Thank goodness you're doing this for me.
Now, that's A3?
Yes.
Okay.
This is A3, entitled Gun Club Aerial Rendering, dated 12/1/2022, prepared by Bowler Engineering. And again, what you'll see here is north is to the right side of the page. At the bottom, you can see White Oak Lane Extension, as well as to the south of the page where Jake Brown Road enters into the gun club. And in the middle of that site, you can see what the proposal is for this evening. What this is essentially is a 441,000 square foot warehouse building, which is inclusive of 10,000 square feet of office, approximately 5,000 at each end of the building, which is the south and the north end of the building in the corners. In addition to that, there's a total of 100 loading docks, split 50-50 on the east and west side of the building. And within that, you can see there's 4 doors that actually you could drive into the building, like loading doors besides loading docks. We also have trash compactors on each end of those. In terms of truck stall parking, we have a total of 85 truck trailer parking spaces. 39 of them are to the west, and 46 of them are to the east. We also have 65 banked trailer spaces, which would be further to the west for the site. As mentioned, the office spaces are in the corners of the building. The corners, I'll call it the northwest corner and the southeast corner of the building, approximately 5,000 square feet for each one of those. And in addition to that is where we've located the car parking stalls. So with that, we have a total of 223 parking stalls, 97 of them to the north side of the warehouse building, and the balance of them, 126, are on the south side of the building, and they're on their south side there. So the proposed access into this site would come from the White Oak Lane extension. It is a very narrow driveway, but accommodates the vehicles comfortably. The reason being there's very limited areas. We've flagged the wetlands, we've identified the floodplain hazard areas, and really have identified this entirely in the uplands area. We are in the middle of process of obtaining all the DEP permits associated with this project, but we are comfortable that we'll be able to achieve them. Just in general, relative to the site itself, as you come in a 30-foot wide driveway off of the White Oak Lane extension, we do have 30-foot drive aisles that for the tractor trailers that could circulate the building entirely. In addition, we have 24-foot drive aisles where the vehicle car spaces are. Each of those parking stalls are 9 by 18, complying with the ordinance with ADA criteria as well. And in terms of the, all right, Mark. Touchdown. So in addition to all of that, we have complied with the new stormwater management regulations on this site. With that, what do I mean? This site is out in the middle of nowhere. We are increasing impervious coverage, and we are obligated to comply with the new stormwater management regs for the DEP, which we are. I think we have probably the most applications at the DEP, that is Bowler Engineering, because of some of these projects in Old Bridge. But we've learned a lot, and we've complied with the regs on their other projects. So we know what we're doing, which is good news. And our client has funded these projects appropriately to build it right and have these projects, I'll say, environmentally friendly relative to stormwater management and how we transition from a development into the surrounding forest around us. There's an excess of 6 detention basins that consist of 4 bioretention basins, an infiltration basin, a constructed wetlands basin, 4 porous pavement basins that are underground as well, and 2 Filterra devices, which are also little mini basins that essentially promote water quality and recharge of the groundwater back into the ground. These are all new criteria for the DEP, and we've been compliant with them, and it's sitting at the DEP now, but following what we've done in the other projects, we expect all that to be approved as these are designed. You'll notice there are also some open space areas still remaining on the site. As I mentioned, it's 200 acres. There were some questions if we complied with the requirements of the redevelopment plan for open space, and the answer, we didn't put a table on there, but the answer is yes. There is special areas there. There are some criteria where we have the proper amount of plantings and canopy within those open spaces. And I think you heard Mr. Gersberg mentioned we're still looking for some locations for 10,000 trees, and there's probably going to be some areas within this that'll comply with the criteria that is part of the redevelopment plan. In regards to that as well, though, I just want you to understand it. I don't think Mr. Gersberg's going to like these numbers, but this is what's required for the DEP. We are proposing over 390 plants throughout the parking lot areas and around the perimeter of the drive aisles. But in addition to the bioretention basins and the constructed wetlands, there's an additional 3,700 plants going in. 3,700 plants. So total for our project, including those basins, the bioretention basins require another 730. So if you add all of that up, the plantings typically what you see around a parking lot and the different areas, we are adding 4,819 plants to comply with the DEP's regulations for our stormwater basins, the constructed wetlands, and things of that nature. Now, you do have, your professionals have asked for more plants. So, as Mr. Gersberg mentioned, we will be talking to them and talking about the redevelopment plan and making sure that we satisfy our obligation with that. But it is, I will say, in regards to compliance with the regulations, your redevelopment plan, I think our office has done a great job to add landscaping in appropriate areas. We do request certain waivers, like having additional landscaped islands within certain amount of parking stalls. But I'd like to say that we are consolidating those areas where asphalt is and maintaining stuff along the perimeters to screen and allow areas for infiltration. So we'll work out the details with that, but I'd like to just point out that I think we've, well, I know personally I've spent hours upon hours with your professionals trying to go through their letters and to assure that we can come to an agreement on what needs to be done for compliance for this board, your ordinances, as well as we have the other jurisdictional agencies. Lastly, we are bringing utilities into the site. Most of them are coming off of the White Oak Lane extension in terms of electric and water communications. The stormwater management discharges out to different locations throughout the site, as I mentioned. And in regards to sanitary sewer, we have sanitary sewer that will be collected around the building and then discharged out to a manhole that's out in Jake Brown Road's right of way to the south. Small pump station will need, a lift station will be needed to get it to that location. But again, we don't anticipate any concerns with that. In terms of water, we have water circulating the building. Again, like the other projects, we have anticipated needing potentially a tank of water to make sure we have adequate fire suppression along with a pump. But as those calculations go forth, we may not need them, but I think we've located them in a location that won't be visible to anywhere around this site. With that being said, lastly, in terms of lighting, we have provided safe lighting around the site in regards to 30-foot high poles to minimize the number. It provides safe lighting for the circulation, for the actual employees parking in the stalls and going in and out of the building. We do request a few waivers with that. We actually have a little bit less lighting than required, but those locations are in areas where the rear, I'll call the back end of tractor-trailer parking spaces where the trailers are. So no one's really going back there. And again, it's 0.6 versus 0.8, and it's basically negligible if you were going to be out in the site. So again, as a responsible engineer on the site, I don't feel it's a concern. We respectfully request that waiver from the standards. Couple other things, I think in terms of operational, it's similar aspect. We don't know exact tenant yet. We do anticipate just to allow in sort of a 24/7 operation. Again, the size and how many loading docks and parking stalls, we do anticipate, similar to the others, as someone comes in, these operations will have tractor trailers coming in and out in the cars, but it will be through shifts and to that nature. Again, no concerns relative to traffic, and we have our traffic engineer here to discuss that. I think your planner has captured the requirements of this redevelopment plan in terms of the timing of the infrastructure related to White Oak Lane, and that, as mentioned, will be funded by this development, and the permitting is being worked on with our office in conjunction with the township, as the township will be the applicant to the DEP for that White Oak Lane extension. With that,
Township review letters, or is there anything you want to highlight, or that you really think you're not going to be able to comply? Or?
with all due respect, it's an extremely long letter, but I am confident, knowing what is in this letter, that we can work together with the professionals. There's probably items that Rakesh or Vina may want to bring up to make sure that I say that we'll work out, but I think I'm acceptable to what they have in here.
Great, thank you.
Complete his testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any board professionals? Rakesh, you have a?
And I do agree with Mr. Cahill that the applicant has done a very good job of working with the board staff in preparation of the site plan, and I think there's a commitment to comply with the comments in our review letter. We do have a joint review letter that was issued by our office and Vina's office, dated December 2nd. The one question I do have, and I didn't hear you really touch on it, Keith, is the redevelopment plan called for the Jake Brown Road. I'm not sure what we're calling Jake Brown Road South. That extension to be.
So Keith, if you hold on for a second, I'm asking Danny to open the redevelopment plan and the circulation plan so that the board understands what we are trying to achieve here. Planning board, master plan, Jake Brown Road.
And while he brings it up, I did forget a couple things in your letter. Compliance with the EV chargers, yes. Bike racks, we're going to add them, but we will be requesting a deviation because the numbers were rather large.
Yeah, you don't need that many, yeah.
Okay. And what was there any other one?
You should go over.
I mentioned walking paths and open space. It would be private if we did do walking paths.
That is correct, because we agreed to that when we were reviewing other projects. But Keith, can you go over the table, because there's a few items that say to be decided, so it's easier to capture them in the resolution if you go over them.
Yep, in terms of the trash enclosure items, we did request a deviation from that because where they're located on the four corners of the building are actually within the loading zone, so we can't enclose entirely, but I did mention there's about 1,000 feet to the nearest location. So we will have it screened on one or two sides of that in the corner, but not in all sides, which was requested. So we'd be requesting that deviation. I mentioned the usable space, signage, we intend to be compliant. I mentioned the islands, walking paths. Irrigation, we intend to have drip irrigation along the visible landscaping to the public. but not a fully irrigated site based on this. Obviously, we have an obligation to maintain all of that to be, to live. I mentioned the bike racks and the lighting. I think that's all of them, and if I left something off, bring me back.
So while Danny gets that page, one of the things in the redevelopment plan, oh, I think that was it, Danny,
This one and the next one after I talk.
is that one of the requirements was that the Jake Brown Road South be extended and incorporated into the redevelopment to provide that additional link out to 516. Yeah, why don't you do that?
So, Board, what you see on the screen is the 2009 circulation plan. And you'll notice the lines in purple are the ones that were proposed to be built. Where you have Jake Brown Road South that meets 516. There was a plan to connect Jake Brown Road South to White Oak Lane and then eventually to Jake Brown Road East. That has been a long-standing vision to connect 516 to Route 9 and Jake Brown Road. Was never accomplished for years. When I was writing the redevelopment plan, we revisited the path, and that needed some tweaking because right next to the gun club site, there is a site which is like an L-shaped property that received zoning board approval for housing, and in fact, that site is included in our housing plan. It will provide 6 affordable units. It was granted a use variance and a site plan. However, the site was never developed. They're back in front of the zoning board with the site plan because now the site plan has expired. The use variance runs with the land, but the site plan, they need to go back to the board. We have been trying to provide this connection and didn't happen. So when I was writing the redevelopment plan, I had worked out with Mr. Gersberg to see if there could be something that we would do and we would get this connection. Now, when the site plans were submitted, we also noticed that there are significant wetlands, and where the roadway was proposed or planned, it doesn't really work. There is a driveway on Mr. Gersberg's site that actually can be used to provide a connection, and we worked with the engineering team to come up with a general public access easement that will allow cars to traverse through this driveway and go on to White Oak Lane. So can you go to my memo? Actually, there is an image on the last page, and that might be helpful. The memo is on the township's website. Maybe not. Actually, Keith, can you just show it on the map? It might be easier for you to show it on your exhibit. That's the one. Danny has it on the screen.
Okay. So you can see it coming in off of, currently it's the driveway that enters into the gun club. We would improve that. We would provide an easement on the site to get to the, into our site and then back out to White Oak Lane Extension. It would be within the easement.
Correct.
So essentially, because of the site is fairly encumbered by wetlands, the original vision of having a full width roadway cutting through there and out to connect to the Jake Brown Road that goes out to 516 would be a bit difficult because of the wetlands and everything. But what we can probably accomplish is a connection from Jake Brown through the site out to the White Oak Lane Extension. That would require the applicant to provide a general public access easement. So that would allow folks who aren't associated with the warehouse to actually traverse through and get out to White Oak Lane. And also the road would have to obviously be, designed and improved to allow for a flow of traffic. We've had conversations with the applicant's engineer about making some slight geometric changes to the driveway to allow that, for that to happen.
Who would maintain the road?
It would be, the portion that's on the applicant's property would be the applicant's road.
Yes, I had something else. I'm not sure if it's relevant to this particular piece of property, but there was talk about preventing discouraging truck traffic from entering 516. Where is that even a possibility?
I'm sorry, say that again, Ms. Cannon?
It said something to the effect of discouraging that signage has to be posted or something to
Okay.
discourage truck traffic from entering onto 516. I thought that was not ever going to be even a possibility that that could happen.
So because of the connection that we're, and I guess I'll point over here on this screen. This is the Jake Brown Road that comes off, 516's over here, comes off onto the site. And then you have White Oak Lane that does the same thing, it goes out to 516. So what we're recommending is, because you have these driveways, this is the way that the site is actually accessed off of the White Oak Lane extension. We're proposing to post signage and everything to basically keep trucks from going out and making a right turn out of the site to go towards 516, and to discourage any trucks from this. This is probably a little easier because this road is not at all intended and won't be improved to be enticing for trucks to go out. So this won't be conducive for trucks, but that's the idea. This White Oak Lane extension, when it's connected, you have this warehouse plus the golf course warehouse, which have driveways coming out onto it, and they're only going to allow vehicles to go north on White Oak Lane out to Route 9. They won't be allowed to put cars out or trucks out towards 516. So that's the what we were referencing in the letter.
Now, is that
discourage trucks.
signage only?
Yeah,
Well,
it's not going to work.
It's going to be, it's going to be basically signage to keep, because it is going to be a public roadway. So,
Is there any way to design the roadway?
what's that?
Trucks can't make that turn?
Brian, if I'm not mistaken, can you chime in? Because I thought when we did the Glenwood Country Club side,
Oh, the driveway
we
itself,
had
yeah.
designed the driveway such that it won't be possible for trucks to really make a left turn on White Oak Lane. So we did that on the gun club side, and probably
Not the actual road itself, but the driveways accessing will prohibit trucks from making that left turn.
Going toward 516?
Exactly, going towards 516. And we would do the same thing for this
do the
access
same
as
thing.
well.
Yeah.
But actually, go ahead, Brian. In the beginning, they're going to have to be able to make a right turn to go through the golf course site.
Yeah, if you remember from the, sure, Brian Proska, Proska, the board's traffic consultant. If you remember from the application for the golf course, the design of that driveway on White Oak Lane was going to be restricted to discourage truck traffic to head towards 516. Smaller radii, improvements to the median so that trucks can't physically turn left out of the golf course. And the idea is to encourage the trucks to head to Route 9 through that extension, White Oak Lane, to Jake Brown. For this site, we would look to do a similar situation for the right turn out. However, due to the timing, the White Oak Lane extension and Jake Brown Road to Route 9, the gun club warehouse may be open before that happens. So the truck traffic from the gun club will have to utilize the golf course to get out to Route 9. So the idea is to provide signage as an interim improvement to discourage the trucks, and then ultimately modify that design to discourage the trucks to make the right out.
Because once they find that route,
Sure.
that's what they're going to be inclined to keep doing.
Yeah, the idea is that, like Brian said, in the beginning, this project will have to be designed to allow trucks to make a right turn out, and then they have to make a left turn into the golf course site to get out to Route 9. Because it's quite possible that the Jake Brown Road, White Oak Lane intersection to the north won't be constructed, may not be constructed, and at the time that this gets a CO. The county won't allow trucks out to 516 either.
Who would police that?
in the beginning, like I said, as an interim measure, there would be signage and there would be, fines and police tickets. Police could actually write tickets.
Keep in mind as well,
not.
if that's the interim case, there's no traffic coming from anywhere from the, call it further to the north or west. The only driveway that would be from the gun club. So you could literally close the lane because it doesn't prohibit the other vehicles, because there would be no other vehicles. Think about it, anybody coming or heading to the south on the White Oak Lane extension. Right now, all of the driveways that use White Oak Lane currently are to the south of the new gun club's driveway. So you physically could put a barrier if you wanted to prevent that. But the signage plan, as we discussed, we're going to put together a separate signage plan and prevent the vehicles, specifically tractor trailers, from going out to 516.
I think I would feel a lot more comfortable if it was prohibited, not discouraged. Discouraged, intimates that there's a possibility, good possibility, that these trucks are going to.
They'll be able to make a right out of our driveway, out of the gun club, but they will not be able to continue past the driveway for the golf course.
Thus preventing them from getting to
Correct.
516.
Correct.
Okay, and that will be an assurance? I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that,
Because there's no other traffic. There's no other option. You can physically.
You could physically block it if you needed to.
But if you physically block it, then remember.
For
your
tractor trailers.
Right, but then even passenger vehicles can go on to 516.
Passenger vehicle.
But Pat, you can also have it, the
It'll
passenger
be their
vehicles
passenger
can make a
vehicle.
left.
Yeah, it's your.
Their employees.
Okay.
So that's a possibility that if there was
Tractor trailers.
if there was an actual observed issue where you had some issue with tractor trailers getting onto 516, the applicant could block 516 just beyond the golf course driveway, the Glenwood driveway, and that way they physically couldn't go out to 516. At that point, they have to make the left turn into the Glenwood site. And the only detriment to that would be that their employees then would not be able to get out to 516 using White Oak Lane, which is,
and the truckers are going to
they'll be
take
okay
the most
with it.
efficient route. So if you make Route 9 the most efficient route, that's where they're going to go. And you make it more prohibitive to get to 516. Because the truck traffic on 516 and 527 is, it's enough of it already.
Not an issue.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Nothing on direct.
So.
I just have one other.
Can I just quickly say something? Even if we block, I think there should be a provision that once the connections that are envisioned for the area are done, we unblock that passage, because the whole purpose of creating a multimodal transportation plan and alternate routes, it defeats the purpose if you're going to block the roadway. So once all the improvements are done in place, we should be able to remove it.
But it would be, and if I didn't make it clear in my thoughts, it would be a temporary block until the construction is complete.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be an interim measure, and by that point, maybe the patrons of that facility are sort of conditioned to go and make that turn into to the golf course by that point too.
Isn't there an existing business though back there now?
But it would be,
No, it doesn't go as far back as where this block would be. Right now, they access it using White Oak Lane from
Current
516.
businesses and stuff back there won't be impeded by it.
Correct.
Correct.
This is just the extension past it.
Correct.
all the traffic call it to the north would only be coming, there's no other opportunity other than the gun club. The other driveways for the existing businesses are further to the south.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, I wanted to do a separate exhibit with signage and like the temporary barrier that could still allow emergency vehicle, even passenger car, which I'm sure we can create it, that a tractor trailer would have no interest in going past it.
Okay, you guys have anything more for Mr. Cahill?
I think Mr. Cahill, said the magic words that they're going to work with us on all of our comments. So I don't really have any specific questions. again, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
You're both comfortable with the level of cooperation?
There's been a tremendous level of cooperation from the applicant's professionals.
I just have one other question that it referred to in your report, which said the extension of Jake Brown Road and to Browns Road shall be completed prior to any issuances of COs
So,
for the warehouses.
so
I
there's,
just want to reaffirm that that's going to happen.
so we do have a timing provision in the redevelopment agreement, and I know Mr. Gersberg's anxious to get up and state that. So the redevelopment agreement actually provides that the road will either be connected out to Browns Road, or that the applicant will post, I think, what was the number, 7 million? For out to Browns Road. 7 million. So they would have to post $7 million plus, I think there's an additional amount for, depending on at what stage the project is, whether they've gotten the permitting or they haven't gotten the permitting from DEP yet. So there is a provision that would allow a CO to happen, but the applicant would then have to post in excess of $7 million to be used for those improvements.
And then the township would
Well, the applicant would then construct those improvements, and they would get their money back. And if they didn't, then the township has that money to build the road.
Exactly. It's a performance bond.
It's a performance bond, exactly. But it would be cash.
Okay, but the township would be committed, I mean, that money would have to be used to do that.
Yes.
Yes, it would be.
Yes, it's specifically for that purpose.
And actually, for the board members, we have been working very diligently to get that access. So the engineering planning office, Mr. Gersberg, there are 3 properties involved wherein we need right-of-way dedication to make that connection really happen. One of the property is the U.S. government Nike site. The other is Old Bridge Chemicals, and then the third one is Perth Amboy. We actually have Old Bridge Chemicals is committed because they are coming in with a development plan as well, and they have committed to the right-of-way dedication. We just got the U.S. government to sign on an application to DEP, so that was a huge task. We took almost 8 months to get a response from them, and finally they signed the papers. So they are interested in selling that property. So we will be working with them to get the dedication. So I'm optimistic that we will be able to get that connection in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Cahill or comments?
I do. Chairman, Mr. Cahill, who's going to handle lead contamination on the site?
DEP has jurisdiction over that, so we'll have to comply.
Okay, they know that there's lead contamination here,
Yes,
I assume, right?
absolutely.
Now, on your drawing down there, the building looks like it's directly over the current gun range, correct? What are your intentions to do with the cemetery out there?
In terms of our study, we've had a historic study done, and the impacts, we were not impacting it.
Well, to me, it looks like your building is going to be right over where the cemetery location should be at. Now, when the gun club came in, I want to say a year and a half ago, they acknowledged that the cemetery existed, and they had their engineer pinpoint it, not exactly pinpoint it, but it turns out that the cemetery is 99 feet by 132 feet. So that's a substantial area. And I can't see you putting a building on top of a cemetery. So I think it's up to you to kind of locate it and figure it out, because if it was a pond, If it was a stream or wetlands, you'd have to work around it.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
So I have a vague recollection when Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club came in front of the zoning board for an addition to their facility. We had done extensive research to see if it was on the historic sites list, and I don't believe it was. And also, it was away from the developable portion of the site. I will be happy to work with Keith to take a look at it. I don't believe the building is placed on the cemetery site. I do have maps on the planning drive, which I can share with and I can coordinate, should the board act favorably.
Well, if you look at the old early tax maps for Mr. Byers' tax maps, and I believe they're in your files, it clearly lays out the exact location of the cemetery. And with the wherewithal this engineer's firm has, they would have no problem locating that, in my opinion.
We're happy to look at it, of course.
Okay, Mr. Lauer, anything else? Okay, anyone else? Okay, so we're going to close this portion and open it up for the residents if they have any questions for Mr. Cahill. Sir?
My name's Bob McNerney. I'm owner of Northwood Manor at Old Bridge LLC. It's a site that the planner had referred to. Just want some
Can
clarification.
you spell your last name, please?
McNerney.
Thank you, sir.
Just wanted some clarifications. On a site plan, it shows the driveway from Jake Brown Road out to 516. Is that for the gun club?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
that's
Jake Brown Road.
That's the existing driveway to the gun club, which is as part of this application, we are not intending to use it. However, the township has asked us to grant an easement onto our property for future extension of Jake Brown Road.
I guess my concern is there's only one means of ingress and egress to this big building. From an emergency standpoint, don't you think it'd be better to have an emergency exit there or entrance for emergency vehicles? Especially the fact that it's 30 feet wide, the main entry.
I have a letter dated 11/23/2002 from the fire.
2022.
2022. I don't know what I said. Sorry.
2023,
Sorry.
Back to the Future.
Yeah. And there was not a concern for the access that is proposed for this facility. I will note that we have a sanitary sewer extension going out that way. That existing driveway will not be destroyed. It's there. If the fire official required that it needed that access point,
It's available.
it is available. It just hasn't been requested at this point.
Well, I think our plan, we have all the wetlands permits to build that road right to your property line. So I would encourage you to consider that in planning this 440,000 square foot building. So I don't know if you need wetlands permits from the corner of your building to the cul-de-sac, but is that something that could be considered?
Again,
Not
we're
being-
given the
it's not being, it's not being required by the township or the township's professional.
I understand that.
I'm just reaffirming that.
I understand that. However, in order to build our project, we'll have to spend the money to improve Jake Brown Road to that point. So I guess my position is maybe we need to talk to the developer to share in those improvements.
Yeah, I'm sure Mr. Gersberg will speak with you offline. Sure.
Okay. And as far as the gun range, the indoor is going to remain there? The indoor gun range? What is going to remain as part of the gun range? Anything?
There's no improvements from the gun club now. on this property that will remain.
The indoor portion of the range is off-site on another, located on another
So
site.
there's, the gun range isn't going to be there?
No.
Okay, because that's also, also under appeal. Okay? Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public have any questions for Mr. Cahill? Okay, we'll now close the public portion, and Mr. Paul Castro, your next witness.
Mr. Steckler. Thanks, Keith.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, Mr. Lenning.
I'm sorry about the late question, but the unimproved gun range road that's going to remain where the sewer easement is there going to be like a fire gate there? Or how would you prevent a passenger car from going into the site at this?
Currently, it's gated.
Correct. So you're going to
we
maintain
weren't
that?
intending to do anything different
Okay.
with what's there.
So I'm sure the fire department has a fire lock on there now. They could still access that in the event of.
I would only assume that. I don't know that answer, but in his letter, there was no request for anything further.
There's no modification request.
No modification required.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Matt Seckler, S-E-C-K-L-E-R.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And your credentials briefly, Mr. Seckler.
So I'm at Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional engineer, recognized professional traffic engineer, and I've been accepted for this board and over 150 other boards as a traffic engineer.
Accepted. Thank you.
You have some brief comments, is that correct, Mr. Seckler?
Yes. As part of my previous appearances before this board, we had prepared an overall traffic impact study as it relates to a number of the warehouses on the western side of Route 9. This application was included within that larger traffic study. So the traffic study that as part of this application tonight is no different in its analysis, its data, its findings, its conclusions. It's just this is the application that was moved to the front of the book, but the totality of the analysis, the improvements that we're making is no different than any other application that we spoke about on the west side of Route 9.
Okay. So do we have any additional testimony? Veena and Rakesh, do we need any additional testimony from the traffic expert?
As far as the actual traffic study goes, I'll defer to Brian to.
So
Just to
what is
put something on record.
What is the date of your report?
The date of the report was July 20th, 2022.
Has anything changed on the ground since then that would, that you're aware of that would modify your opinion?
I will say we have done traffic counts in September as part of the DOT applications for this project. The assumptions that we made, if you remember, there were counts that were originally done in March of 2021 and December of 2021. And because it was COVID, we made some adjustments. When we did counts recently in September, relatively post-COVID, life back to normal.
We did these virtually.
We did these virtual, but the counts that we had done, we adjusted them to account for COVID. The numbers that are out there as of September are nearly identical to what we had adjusted to. So,
excellent.
So again, plus or minus 1% than what our assumptions were. That's the only, I would say, data point that we have that's updated. And again, that was not part of this submitted study, but the facts and findings are the same.
Great, thank you.
Can I just say, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I just read that there's a traffic study for South Middlesex County. Are you aware of who's doing that, or are we involved in that at all?
I personally am not. I don't know if it's a county-led procedure. I know Middlesex County has a number of transportation plans they're looking at, but I'm unaware. I don't know if your board's expert
Yeah,
is.
because it seemed to involve only truck traffic.
Members of the board, again, Brian Proska. As part of the review, we reviewed this under the previous application, so it's a similar traffic study. There are a number of roadway improvements the applicant has agreed to that they're doing as part of the other applications. Improvements to Route 9 and Fairway Lane, improvements to Route 9 Jake Brown Road, improvements to 516 and White Oak Lane. So they're all included as part of this application as well as the extensions of all the roadway network. I think the only follow-up that I'd ask Mr. Seckler, similar to the other applications, any sort of fulfillment center type use, parcel hub type use, cold storage that would generate significantly more traffic than a general warehouse for this facility?
I don't believe there's any anticipation for what we were calling a distribution parcel hub. The Amazon word is not intended for this site. Similarly, that's why the parking rates are set as such that it would not be feasible for that type of use to have, I would say, so little parking, which is what we're providing on this site.
Great. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
So you're pretty comfortable with the study being done then is?
We are, yeah. We were comfortable with the findings under the previous application, and this doesn't change with the site plan that's before you.
Okay, very good. Board professionals?
Chairman Marucci, I just want to emphasize the redevelopment plan does not allow distribution centers and fulfillment centers within any of the sites.
Yes, that's a good point to the public that, these are not going to be fulfillment centers. Okay.
I don't have anything else for the applicant's traffic engineer.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll close that portion and open it up to the public. Any questions for Mr. Seckler for the traffic impact for this project? Okay, we'll close the public portion and we'll move on to your next witness.
Our last witness, Ms. Keller.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Marucci, members of the board. Good to be back here again.
Okay.
See you.
Your name for the record?
Sure. Kate Keller, Keller, and I am a principal with the firm of Phillips Price Greigel Laney Hughes LLC.
Thank you. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And briefly, your credentials again, Ms. Keller?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey and also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Both of my license is current. I've been before this board approximately 5 to 8 times in the last year, and I've testified before about 75 boards across the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Please proceed.
Sure. So I'm just going to give some brief testimony tonight. You've heard a lot of the details about the site, and we are requesting a few deviations from the redevelopment plan, as well as some waivers that Mr. Cahill testified to. I think that, I think the most crucial thing when we're looking at this site, the Gun Club, is really how it is an isolated site. It's located within this very thick buffer area. It's constrained by development, and all development is really proposed to be in these locations that will not be visible from anywhere on the property, from outside of the property. So, overall, the minor deviations that we're requesting, which, just for the record, it's deviation from the redevelopment plan related to screening the trash enclosures, which in this case is almost like a technical variance because they really are compactors where it's not necessarily feasible to do so. Also, we are requesting a deviation/variance related to parking lot islands, and as far as the amount of landscaping in the parking lot, less than what is required. And then, as Mr. Cahill testified to, we're able to comply somewhat, but we do technically need waivers related to the irrigation system and bicycle racks, as well as lighting. So again, with each of these, I think the crucial part here, and with all the deviations and waivers in this case, is that the purposes of the redevelopment plan would still be advanced, even though we are requesting these deviations. We also have to meet the negative criteria here, which have to show that it can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or without substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the redevelopment plan. And I think this is a case where really these are requested waivers and deviations that are minor in nature given the overall scope of the plan. We're located here within the redevelopment plan's I-10 industrial area, where where warehousing of this nature with accessory office is a permitted use. And this proposal complies with all of the floor area setback lot area regulations, buffering, of course, if you just look at the aerial, I think that's evident, of that section of the redevelopment plan. And in addition to that, it advances the township's goals that were part of the redevelopment plan, which are really creating an economic and employment base in an area that's in close proximity to existing industrial land uses. In this case, this is the SED zones, which are located slightly off of this map, but in the vicinity, of this proposal. So, we're seeking to preserve environmentally sensitive lands with the wetlands and riparian buffers in the area, and also provide new infrastructure in terms of roadways and connections that, the applicant will be providing in accordance with the redevelopment agreement, as you just heard. So, in this context, I think that the deviations and variances are very minor. They will not have any impact on the outside of the property because of these conditions that you're seeing here. And the benefits of effectuating the redevelopment plan will outweigh any detriments associated with these deviations we're requesting tonight. So I don't have any more further direct testimony. I believe I hit on each of the deviations, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if we could, and only because I've been trying to take notes and go through it all, if we could maybe go through, and if usually it's easy for me, if we can go through our planner's report, pages 4 through 5, where it identifies potential variances, waivers, deviations.
Sure.
And just identify which ones we're requesting, which ones we're not.
Okay. I may ask for some backup.
I was
going
going
to
to say, I was just going to say, if you need, some assistance with it as well.
Right, yeah.
Just because I want to make sure that the board knows exactly what it's voting on and we, what we're doing here.
Fair enough.
Yes. So, and, I'm basing this on the site plan and Mr. Cahill's testimony tonight, which is that we are requesting a deviation for not providing screening around the trash enclosures, and that's due to their location and the fact that they are compactors, where it's not necessarily feasible or ideal to have that there, and these are located in the interior of the site. Number 2 on that list, open space, we will be providing open space, usable open space.
So that's compliant?
That's compliant.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Signage, we will comply. The canopy open space, we can comply. We are complying. Okay. We are requesting the deviation for the parking lot islands. The next is the trash enclosure. That's a different section. That's from the ordinance rather than the redevelopment plan, so that does still also apply. Yes, that is technically a variance. Walking paths through the site, we can comply? We can comply, not but it's not public. Yes, usable for employees and users of the site itself. Okay. Did we address the tandem parking?
I did not.
Yes.
So that's a deviation.
Yes, that is a deviation. Okay. That and that has to do with banked spaces that are proposed on the site, where tandem parking is not permitted per the township ordinance. I think this is a case where if the bank parking were to be needed in the future, it could be carefully controlled by the applicant. This is a site that's not really open to the public, and the users would have, be able to control it in a way that tandem parking that is in a more public area is not always feasibly controlled.
Okay, thank you.
Irrigation we are providing some irrigation on the site, and but not completely, correct? Yes. So it's technically a waiver because we cannot fully comply with the standard, but irrigation will be provided on the site, and the applicant will meet all of their their responsibility and their diligence to ensure that all of those many plantings stay alive. Bicycle racks, again, we will be providing some bicycle racks. We cannot provide all of them, but we believe that your professionals agree as well that we are providing an appropriate number based on the number of employees and the site characteristics. This comment regarding circulation, I believe that was discussed via testimony. This has to do with potential environmental constraints and the easements that your professionals explained earlier. So I think that's covered for this at this point. And then we are requesting design waivers related to lighting, where a minimum of 1-foot candle and an average of 0.8 are required, and we're providing 0.6 in each case. And as Mr. Cahill stated, those low points are really behind the trailer storage areas, trailer parking areas, and higher lighting is not required, just given the context and the proposed use here. There's no safety issue involved. So I believe that covers it.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Absolutely.
You guys have any comments?
I don't have any questions or comments, but I do have a question for Mr. Policastro. And I think you and I have talked about DCA rejecting two parcels within the redevelopment area, which pertains to Gun Club site. And I will fill in the board with it. I think this is a perfect time so that we have language in the transcripts and the resolution as well, and you can chime in. So as part of the redevelopment plan, a copy of the plan is sent to DCA and they review the redevelopment plan. We received a response from DCA only, I believe, mid of August? Yeah, mid of August. And there were certain parcels which they partially rejected the redevelopment plan. And by rejection means their letter said they rejected, but there is nothing in redevelopment law that really guides you what happens if something, if you get a letter from DCA with a rejection. But after seeing the letter, reviewing all the parcels, one thing was clear, that they rejected portions that are outside the sewer service area. And there were two parcels that belong to the Gun Club site, now the Gun Club site, which they fully rejected, the two parcels. One is a triangular piece that is on White Oak Lane, and then the So this is one piece. This is a parcel that was rejected. And then the other parcel, Mark, you'll have to move. The other parcel
right here.
is this one. And these two parcels were rejected primarily because they are completely outside the sewer service area. I mean, those two parcels are completely wet and encumbered with constraints, and that is why they are outside the sewer service area. The applicant is not proposing any development within those two parcels. I did have a conversation with the township attorney, and now that the property is consolidated, we just decided to leave it alone. There is nothing being proposed there, so I am comfortable with just proceeding with the site plan application the way it is.
As are we. We are comfortable, yeah. It doesn't adversely affect the development, and I think you got it right, Vina.
That is correct.
For the record, why, if I may ask, why did they reject them?
Because, I just explained, because it's outside the sewer service area. So one of the principles is redevelopment should be encouraged where within the sewer service area. When it is outside, they don't accept it. But it is important only if you're putting a building there or developing it. But if you're not developing
Right, so
it just doesn't make sense.
Sorry, it doesn't preclude development in this case.
Yeah,
Or affect it in that matter.
And when you designate a redevelopment area, you don't create the boundaries based on whether it's developable or not. You just go by the entire parcel. So there were other parcels too where they were encumbered by wetlands or other constraints, and DCA said this site is partially approved. But what they haven't seen the development plan. They have only seen the redevelopment plan, which does not have a concept, right? So that is why they issued a letter saying this parcel is partially approved, this parcel is fully rejected.
It was technical in nature.
Yep.
And Ms. Keller, I presume you agree with that.
Yeah, it's, just from this, I have not experienced it, but, I don't know exactly, what their rationale was, but to me, it seems like a very technical, very literal reading of the redevelopment statute, where even though, the area is, one of the criteria for being an area in need of redevelopment is that it is isolated in some ways, but I guess, they're trying to really focus on directing redevelopment to sewered areas, which
there's
is
no-
exactly what's going on here, because the portion of the property that is proposed to be developed is within the sewer service area.
And it's not part of the limit of disturbance or the building envelope?
No.
No.
The
not.
DCA, they just looked at it and said the whole site was going to be developed, not knowing. that
Correct.
it was
Yes.
wet.
No
Correct.
nuance.
Saying we,
That's
this
right.
portion is no good, but it's no good anyway, just because of the fact that it's completely wet.
I mean, to be honest, if they would have really read the report, there was extensive analysis of the environmental constraints. Knowing that it is constrained, I would assume it's logical that if it's constrained, it's going to be outside the sewer service area.
Right.
So,
Logical?
Yes, and also subject to all of the
Because this
requirements
is-
of their fellow state agencies.
because this is, I mean, I've written numerous redevelopment plans. This was the first time I really got a response of saying that a parcel is rejected, so. Partially rejected, so. But we, I mean, the township attorney, myself, we are comfortable proceeding with the application the way it is.
Thank you.
Lastly, Mr. Gersberg, can you comment on Jake Brown Road South extent, the piece that is on your property? Say it,
We
Ephraim.
will work with the town to make it cohesive, like we've worked with the town on all the other requests that keep on coming.
Thank you so much.
That was a classic speaking to the mic. Right.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board for Ms. Keller or comments? Okay, so we'll open it up to the public now. Any questions related to Ms. Keller's testimony? Okay, I'll close the
Yeah.
public portion.
We do have our architect here. If there are questions only, we have him in the audience. We don't have anything truly on direct that we had in mind, but full disclosure, if there are questions about the architecturals, it's the same as the other buildings, so we've flown him in.
It's a warehouse in the woods.
Yes, we need to see pictures.
Want to see? Yes?
Ms. Cannon wants to see pictures.
course.
I just want to let the board know that we had worked with the architect when writing I had worked with them when I was writing the redevelopment plan, and the elevations for all 9 warehouses are identical and are compliant with the redevelopment plan.
That exhibit looks awfully familiar.
Yeah. Please state your name for the record.
Larry Valenza, Valenza. I'm
Have you sworn?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Valenza, you have some very brief comments to describe an exhibit that's just been offered on the easel?
It's the same building as the other ones, same building materials, same.
The other ones meaning
The
prior approval.
previously
approved.
Right.
So we're using the same building materials, the same colors, the same application of color. The heights are the same, the office corners are the same. So it's just we want the whole development to be cohesive. And so we're just repeating the designs from the other buildings.
Okay. Does that conclude your testimony?
Unless you have questions.
So there's no variation at all. They're all exactly the same.
That's right.
Just the sizes are different.
Correct.
The uses are basically the same.
Yes.
You're having offices in some and not in others.
They'll all have.
They'll have
Office
slight
space.
variations
They'll
on
all
that.
have offices.
Oh, they all have office space?
Initially, no office will be built, but there's office corners on the buildings
Contemplated.
for future tenant,
For
for when a
future, for
tenant comes
proposed
along.
offices, yeah, for when
Correct.
tenants come in. Okay. Rakesh or Vina?
I don't have any questions for the applicant's architect.
Me neither.
Okay, any of the board members? Okay, I'll now open it up to the public for questions for Mr. Valenza. Okay, I'll close it, the public portion. Thank you very much.
That is all we have, Mr. Chairman.
And that concludes your testimony?
It
for the
does.
evening? Okay.
What are we doing about the fire report?
Thank you.
The fire report we got?
Yeah,
Does that require any kind of response? Also, Mr. Lavalos, I mean, we've just gotten, I think
Yeah, I
we
think
can have testimony on the record.
Well, obviously, they're not here, so we can't have the testimony, but I.
No, but I mean the response to his memo, or at least some.
I'm not sure the question, Ms.
Can you have someone respond to the fire marshal's memo?
And also Mr. Lavalos.
Certainly. In regards to the fire official's letter, there were like 5 comments that they're all construction-related that we will not have a problem complying with, and we'll provide that information prior to any type of C of O, but to meet, because some of them are like fire pressure, water valves, things of that nature we'll do.
Okay.
So no concerns with the fire official. And in regards to Mr. Lavello's letter as well, he did point out numerous items relative to the clearing. And again, as mentioned previously, the responses to this and what is required to be done by the developer in compliance in accordance with the redevelopment plan, we will be working through with the redeveloper redevelopment agreement in terms of the replacement, tree replacements. Because we have had on the record what we were doing, as Mr. Gersberg mentioned previously at the onset of the testimony.
Correct.
So some of his comments regarding the number of trees to be replaced and so forth, the money is there, and it's just you're waiting to find out where to plant, where these are going to be planted, to put them on a site plan?
How and where? Yes.
Okay, but the commitment is there that,
It is.
okay, I just want that on the record, because that was
Yeah, I mean, Mr.
a lengthy report
Let's
with
give
a
you
lot
some-
of detail.
We want to
in
give
it.
you comfort, we're this, full disclosure, so, yeah.
Full disclosure, does this work? Yeah, it is. We've committed to the 10,000 trees to plant. Honestly, if we would have gotten them, we've been asking, you can ask Vina, we've been asking for locations for now 3 months. We now have to obviously stop asking for locations
Okay.
for the next
No, I
4
just want that
4
on the
months.
record.
The commitment is there,
The
Mr.
commitment is 100% there. We funded I don't even think we had to, but Vina asked for it, so we did. But we funded the 100,000 toward the education thing. That's already funded, even though we didn't even, before we broke even, at ground and anything. And we're committed to 10,000, and it's covered under the developers agreement. It's already in writing.
Yes, it'll be in that agreement.
And the replacement of the heritage trees, the number that's being requested?
That's all within the developers
That's
agreement.
all.
Yeah, we'll address that,
Everything
we'll
we
address
do,
that
we're
in the
gonna put on
redevelopment
the
agreement.
developers agreement with the council as well. They'll have to sign off on it, so it'll be.
So that'll be a condition of this approval that will comply with the redevelopment agreement.
Yeah.
Subject to negotiation of that agreement,
Developers agreement.
which, again, as I said, that's, we believe is typical.
Ms. Cannon, and I mean, like Mr. Gersberg had said, that we are looking at the golf course site because there are areas where we can plant trees, especially closer to the parking area near the residences. We're also, Nicole and I were discussing this with Mr. Lenning about planting some trees within the Rocky Creek area. So we are still investigating, but we will work with SEGMA's team to come up with a plantation plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cannon. Anyone else? Okay. So, Mr. Polakasher, you want to summarize?
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
You're all set, okay?
We're all set.
We'll move on to Mr. Sordillo
We need to open it up to the public for general public
for
comment
general comments.
on this application.
Yes, for this application. Okay, any general comments from the public on this application? No questions for the witnesses just now, general comments. Sure, come on up.
My name is Carolyn Smoljan, S-M-O-L-J-A-N. You know, I live on Spring Hill Road, so I've been there since 1985. And now all of a sudden I see all the farmland in the woods starting to go because of these warehouses that, to be quite honest with you, in Middlesex County, I think we have more than enough around. I mean, I used to have to drive through South Brunswick, and that's all I looked at was warehouses. But I'm more concerned now as to what is even going to be stored in these warehouses, because part of this development is going on the Nike site, and that was a Superfund site, if I remember correctly, at one point in time. So it makes me wonder what else may happen there. Are we going to have dangerous materials being stored in these warehouses, whether they're on the west side of 9 or on the east side of 9? But that's a big concern because that could impact all of the residents along Spring Hill Road and Schulmeister Road, Old Mill, Cottrell. It's getting scary. And that's all I wanted to say for now.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll close out the public comment section. And, I'll summarize.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So again, this is an application for preliminary and final major site plan approval. There are a number of deviations / waivers / variances that the planner just went through in her testimony, which are identified going through in our board township planners report. In connection with any approval that would be given, there were a number of conditions that were discussed. Those conditions include initially complying with the reports that were issued by the township and board professionals. There were, including with that, is an easement to be granted to the township for public access to utilize, the drive from Jake Brown Road South through the site to access White Oak Lane, the White Oak Lane extension. There was extensive discussion, and the applicant agreed to work with the township professionals with regard to providing some type of blockage of truck traffic from the site accessing route to access Route 516, whether it be for a temporary purpose during the construction of all the improvements. The applicant agreed to work with the township professionals to confirm whether or not there is any impact with a potential location of a cemetery on the site and the proposed developments. As was with the other applications, the applicant agreed that the site will not be utilized as a distribution center, which is actually not permitted pursuant to the redevelopment plan. And specifically with regard to, when we talked about all the reports, with regard to the Township Conservation Officer's report, Mr. Lovato, the applicant will comply with those terms through the redevelopment agreement and any amendment that's required thereto in negotiations and compliance working with the township professionals and, if necessary, entering into an amendment or further redevelopment agreement. And that's all I have for conditions in connection with this application. Thank you.
Joe?
Yes.
Can we add the blanket condition that we have put in for every site plan that the developer will execute an amended or supplemental redevelopers agreement and will enter into a financial agreement, because the financial agreement is actually in the final stages. It just has not been executed, but it's already ready.
Yes,
So
yes.
that would be prior to receiving a signature on the final compliance plans.
Yeah, that escaped me because I was just addressing it with the Lovato letter in compliance with regard to the tree replacement. But yes, overall, there is a potential requirement either for an amendment or a secondary redevelopment agreement with the township, subject to adding in this development including in there, including with the financial agreement.
Also, can we just specify even the fire official's letter? Because since he's not here, I would just want the applicant to work with the fire marshal to address any concerns he may have. I believe the fire code official has issued his memo and he didn't have any comments. I know that he was unable to issue a memo for Jake Brown Road North, but that's, for the gun club he did. And but with the fire marshal, I think they need to work with the fire marshal.
Unless there's an objection to the...
No objection.
Absolutely, that will be included as a condition.
Okay, well said. Anything else from?
I just have a question.
Okay. While they're chit-chatting. Who's your question for?
What is the status of the redevelopment agreement? Yeah, what is the status of the redevelopment agreement? Is it coming in sections, or is it?
The redevelopment agreement was signed on June 9th, 2022 already, but that pertained to the first three sites, the Glenwood Country Club, BOE, and Jake Brown Road South. There was language in there that said that a supplemental redevelopment agreement or an amendment to the original redevelopment agreement shall be made once the Gun Club site and Jake Brown Road North come to fruition. So now that's why I asked Joe to add that as a condition, because we will be working on a supplemental or an amendment. We don't know yet which way we're going to include the Gun Club site and the Jake Brown Road North side. However, note that all the roadway improvements were already captured within the first redevelopment agreement. So it's just the fine tuning with the Jake Brown Road North side and the Gun Club side, like trees and stuff like that, that needs to be cleaned up. But the
Mostly
major
site plan issues.
right, the major improvements were captured by Exhibit H of the original agreement.
Okay, so the whole discussion we had regarding keeping truck traffic off of 516, that's going to be included in this?
Right, it's part of the site plan approval as well, but yes, it will be captured.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing else and we've concluded, I'm going to move it to a vote. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
By Mr. Lenning, and a second?
I'll second.
By
Mr. Petty?
Mr. Petty.
Ms. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Lenning?
Yes.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Because of the burial site not being located? No.
Mr. Renner?
No.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
And Chair Marucci.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we get 5 for the court reporter, but really for Mr. Cahill?
Sure, we're going to take a 5-minute recess and then announce the
Thank you.
next application. Thank you. With that, we'll call the next application, which is 56-2022P, Segment JBN Property LLC, and it's to consolidate existing lots and subdivide to construct 2 warehouses with office space along with other site improvements.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Mark Policastro, attorney for the applicant. I'd like to introduce Mr. Gersberg for some brief comments. Mr. Gersberg, please state your name.
Remain
for the
under
record.
oath.
Ephraim Gersberg, owner of 2020 Acquisitions.
Great, let's have you sworn again, or are you good?
No, he remains,
great.
it's clear he's
Great.
been sworn in earlier today, remains under oath.
Please proceed.
Again, I appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll move along expeditiously. With this project, I want to make it clear that we've already heard that there's concern from the residents, who I'm hoping, I assume, are in the back. So I want to say to them ahead of time, they should have their say and they should talk to you. But I want to, just even before they even speak about this, as you see Spring Hill Road on the, yeah, who's pointing? Oh, you are. I didn't know where the ears coming from. The corner of Spring Hill Road, and to the left, Keith, that group of there. Although you'll see that we have significant trees that we're leaving, we didn't think it made sense to knock down trees to build a berm to put trees back. We are willing, nevertheless, to work with the, if this is approved, we're willing to work with all 7, there are, I believe, 7 homes there, to not only work on what we can do, and we're going to agree to put up a fence in one place, but also I'd like to discuss with the homeowners contributing money so they could put landscaping on their property as well. So that means they could put evergreens if they want. We believe that there's enough buffering that won't be an issue, but in light of the fact that they're, I'm sure, concerned, and they'll voice their concerns today, before they even voice those, I wanted to let you know that that's what we are willing to do, and would work with them we would ask the township planner to work with us on that, because there has to be kind of a meeting of the minds on that as well.
Okay.
Also, for the residents farther down Spring Hill Road, now you can point. If you see, you'll see where the project goes. There's that field right there that is open. That's hopefully where, Ms. Cannon, that we'll try to lose some trees there as well. That'll be one of the areas where we're hoping we'll be able to plant some trees from the ones that we have to replant.
Out of the 10,000?
That's our contribution of us finding. We still need you guys to find more spots. But there, it's not on the plan, but we're agreeing to do it at the suggestion of the township planner, is we're going to build a berm there, and on top of the berm, we're going to build, we're going to put Leland cypresses or something like that, and evergreen trees. I don't want to take away from Mr. Cahill's testimony, but the way that it sits, it's lower, and the heights, you will not be able to see any of our warehouses from any of those homes besides the trees. But we're agreeing ahead of time to build a berm and landscape it.
So there's no topo on this map?
No,
You're saying
he'll be.
The site is lower
Mr.
than the
Cahill's going to get
homes?
into everything. This is.
Okay.
He's going to go through everything. I just wanted to say that ahead of time, we're hearing what they're saying. With regard to the ones to the right of Spring Hill, the farther ones, there's over almost 3 football fields of forest between them and the warehouse that's going to be along Schulmeister. And with regard to the warehouse that you'll see on the left side, the bigger one, that one will be protected by that berm. So I just want to say ahead of time that we hear the concerns. I've heard it before on other projects, and our goal is to berm and then plant. And just to give you an idea, there is a berm already on Jake Brown South that you've seen, but that one is not even close to what you'll see at the end when we have to wait for the planting season. So if you go to Jake Brown South on the other side of the street, you'll see there's already a berm. On top of that berm will be extensive plantings. It'll be beautified, and that's something that you'll see here as well. So I just want to give you a reference for kind of what we're talking about. So that berm is 15 feet, and then with the trees, it's going to be significant.
Okay.
So you're saying on Cottrell Road also, where you have the berm, you're going to be planting trees?
The ones that you see already right now? The one that's up now you're talking about?
In the back?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's
you have a berm, like
yes.
a
There's going to be
amount of dirt.
Yes, there's going to be extensive plantings down there. Yeah, if you recall, we even, I think, showed a picture of it at the last hearing when we got approved. There'll be, on both sides, it'll be beautified on the neighbor's side, and then trees all up and down that entire berm,
The top of the berm.
top of the berm.
Okay, so
Evergreens.
there's not going to be just dirt there?
No, no,
There's
no,
just
no,
going to
no,
be
no,
all
no, not at all.
plantings?
And the only
Stabilized
reason,
and planted.
and normally we wouldn't do that, in our defense, we wouldn't normally do that berm right now. The reason we put up the berm now was to shield the homes
from the
early
construction.
on in the construction. Normally, the way it works is, we don't do that till the very end for logical reasons of plantings and stuff like that. We don't want to plant right now when we're in
Right.
construction. But we did that as a courtesy to the
homeowners.
homeowners. But come March, April, May, you'll be seeing all that stuff being put up on top of that berm. That berm will be beautiful.
Okay.
That's,
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Gersberg testimony?
I'm happy to come back after they see the whole project.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? Yes.
My name's Asbjorn Nihus, N-Y-H-U-S. I live at 75 Spring Hill Road, which is one of the ones on the right there. Asbjorn, A-S-B-J-O-R-N. Okay, I heard his statement about the berm, big pile of dirt, sounds wonderful. My question is why these warehouses can't be moved further towards Route 9, why they need to be so far away from Route 9. There's no one living on Route 9.
It's not zoned, that's not what it's zoned.
I thought this whole property was, isn't this whole property yours?
It's not zoned.
Okay, so you,
And there's an easement.
it's the same block, so you can't move the warehouse any further towards Route 9 than it is now?
Yeah, I think this would be Mr. Cahill's in his wheelhouse.
Huh? You'll go through that? Okay.
Are there? Yeah,
Mr. Cahill, we will-
possibly you can redirect your questions to Mr. Cahill once he testifies. Okay, thank you, sir.
Barbara Nyas. Yes.
Where's your home?
75 Spring Hill.
You can look at it right there, it's the larger property right there.
There are
Look
not
at it. That's
three
me right there.
football fields worth of trees behind me. Your warehouse.
Yeah, the next witness will hit that issue head on.
Okay, is that all, ma'am?
It's a residential neighborhood. It doesn't, warehouses don't belong in a residential neighborhood. I don't understand why.
Okay, we'll address that during the planning stage of the testimony, and then you can ask some questions of the planners as well. Thank you. Well, you want to wait for the direct testimony, or is it something directed toward the planner, or? Why don't we just wait, we'll direct it toward Mr. Cahill when he testifies. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public portion for Mr. Gersberg's testimony, and Mr. Policastro?
Mr. Cahill,
Mr. Cahill.
state your name for the record.
You're still under oath.
Great.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Okay. For the record, we'll mark this A1.
Please describe A1.
Yep, A1 is Jake Brown North Aerial, sheet 1 of 1. Today's date, 12/5/2022, prepared by Bowler Engineering. For reference, north will be to the right side of the page. As you can see, Route 9 is at the top of the exhibit, running in a north-south direction. You can see Spring Hill Road along the south side, the east side of the property on the bottom side of the exhibit. Jake Brown Road running on the south side of the property, as well as Schulmeister Road on the north side of the property. Just wanted to give the board a location relative to where our project is. As I mentioned, Schulmeister Road intersection of Route 9 is along the north side of our property. It extends to the south end of the site, which is where Jake Brown Road intersects with Route 9. Jake Brown Road does extend in an easterly direction. It doesn't continue entirely to Cottrell End or Spring Hill Road. It ends, but that is the southern property line of the site. As part of this project, it does involve a subdivision, so I felt it'd be most appropriate to go through that first, and I have a couple exhibits I'd like to bring up for that. In essence, what I'd like to point out is part of this development, a portion of this property is in the I3 zone, which is the industrial zone. In the industrial zone, which is the eastern portion of the site, that dotted blue line that you can see that runs in a north-south direction separates the ED02 zone, which is a commercial property that fronts along Route 9. And that's all part of, and where these lines have been drawn as part of the subdivision that I'd like to get into. So I'm going to pull up my next exhibit, which is actually the survey, but I then just colorized it to hopefully clarify for everybody on the board what I'm talking about. So I think I'll mark it because I colorized it. Unfortunately, you have the subdivision up, not the survey, but that's okay. This is A2, and it's entitled an Alta survey prepared by Control Point Associates. It's dated 10/17/2022 for revision 1. That's the last date on it. Control Point is our surveyors. This is our base document that is the base document we've used for our site plan design. For reference, north is to the right side of the page. You can see Route 9 at the top, and again, Spring Hill Road at the bottom on the eastern side of the property. Schulmeister on the north side, Jake Brown Road on the south side. This property is in total 134.1 plus or minus acres. It's encompassed by it takes 3 lots to create that. First, up along Schulmeister Road is Lot 9. That is 1.43 acres. Lot 16, which is fronts along Route 9, is outlined in orange on the frontage of Route 9 to the west, is 3 acres. And the balance of the property outlined in blue is Lot 7, which is 129.67 acres. And if I did all my math right, and the surveyors did a good job, 134.101 acres. That lot is those 3 lots will get consolidated into one piece of land and then subdivided into 3 new lots as part of our proposed development and subdivision this evening. So I'd like to go to the next exhibit, which is our subdivision map. We'll mark this A3. Yeah, perfect.
And you're going to call that subdivision map?
This is the entitled Preliminary and Final Major Subdivision Plat prepared by Control Point Associates, dated 11/1/2022. Again, north is to the right side of the page, same orientation. Route 9 is on the top of the page. Spring Hill Road is along the bottom. You can see Schulmeister to the north and Jake Brown Road to the south. So what I did is put these nice pretty colors here to identify the 3 proposed lots. As part of this project, as I mentioned, we consolidated the 3 prior lots, lots 7, 9, and 16, and subdivided it into 3 new lots, which we're calling 1A, 1B, and 1C. 1A, outlined in blue, is 71.6 acres. The purple colored lot is 1B, is 33.5 acres. They're both in the I3 zone, the industrial zone, for clarity. So,
Did you say all 3 or I3?
The I3 zone. So
All 3, okay.
Yep. Up here, the subdivision line runs in an east-westerly direction, separating Lot 1A from 1B. 1A fronts along Jake Brown Road, fronts up to Spring Hill Road, and fronts along the major overhead power lines. That is a 100-foot wide easement that no construction can occur in. This is a natural division between the lands to the east that go out to Spring Hill Road and the division of the land that goes up towards Route 9. Clearly, there's no construction that can go underneath these high-power tension lines. There was a natural border on where to separate what we'll call the commercial property in terms of the zone line, which would be the EDO2 zone, which would be what fronts on Route 9. Naturally, commercial stretch of highway where you'd want your commercial properties, retail-type properties, and uses along Route 9 with that type of access, similar to what's up and down your property, up and down the highway now. So on this map, the pink color, again, and it's the same map as you have up there, is where the EDO2 zone is, and that fronts along Route 9 and will allow different types of uses. As part of the project this evening, after this subdivision is created, the improvements, as part of this application, no improvements is along the Lot 1C, which is essentially the frontage on Route 9. There is currently on site the farmer's market, the greenhouses, things to that nature, and some also up at the corner parking lot, public parking lot as there. And again, as I mentioned, that line and that property is kind of subdivided by the existing overhead power lines of the JCP&L easement. No improvements along there as part of this application. The two lots created in the east, 1A and 1B, is part of the proposed improvements tonight, which is where the industrial zones occur, and we're proposing 2 industrial buildings. So that kind of gives a summary of the subdivision. Now, just so you know, and I'll give you some square acreage, Lot 1A, the blue lot, the one that's, again, fronting along the Jake Brown Road and the Spring Hill Road up to the power lines, at 71.6 acres. Lot 1B, which is runs along the Schulmeister Road, extends back and up to the, just about to the power lines. That is 33.5 acres. And then the balance of 1C, pink lot 1C, is the 26.9 acres. Now that, I didn't screw up the math, but only adds up to 132 acres. And that's because, remember before, 134, we're down to 132. Where'd the other 2 acres go? The township has asked to create a 33-foot half right-of-way of Schulmeister Road, so we're dedicating lands to Schulmeister Road. Okay, again, along here. We're losing approximately 1.5 acres over that length to create that roadway half width, the 33 feet. The balance of that area lost is along Jake Brown Road to bring that to a 66-foot right-of-way. And there we're swapping some land in there. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty because it's not straight lines and there's little pieces not back and forth. But at the end of the day, that extra 2 acres is going to be creating right-of-way for public roads for the town. And again, as I mentioned, and part of your master plan, Schulmeister Road to be a total width of 66 feet. Our frontage, we're giving a 33. And again, on Jake Brown Road, similar, we're giving lands away to get that. So when we're all done, we didn't lose any land. It still adds up to that original 34 acres, and that we're going to end up with 2 separate lots for development that are in the industrial zone where we're proposing tonight 2 separate warehouse buildings, and then the balance of it will be in the EDO2 for future development of Route 9 for uses that are compatible with the Route 9 corridor. Hopefully that is a clear description of the subdivision, and if there's any further questions on that, I would hit those now or move into
Whatever the
proposed improvement.
Whatever the board's pleasure, if you want to hit questions on the subdivision first.
Questions.
Yeah, we can move on.
Great.
Okay, great.
And we'll wait for questions till the end of the testimony.
Great.
It's technically, they're 2 separate kind of testimonies, but not really one witness.
They're baked in, yes.
So as mentioned, back to A1 real quick, you can see the existing uses that are up along Route 9 being the farm stand, parking lot up at Jake Brown and Route 9, The balance of it is forested and farmlands that are vacant fields. To give you some rough numbers there, we have approximately along Route 9, that frontage. About 2,100 linear feet of frontage. Along Jake Brown Road, 2,500 linear feet. Around Schulmeister, 2,200 linear feet. And along Spring Hill Road, which is kind of chopped up into two sections, approximately 900 feet of frontage there. In general, as noted in your professionals' letters as well, the topography of the site, in general, the northeast corner is the highest point, and it sheds down towards the intersection of Route 9 and Jake Brown Road in the southwest corner. You can see there are residential uses along Spring Hill Road, vacant along both Jake Brown Road, and then across the street from Schulmeister Road, we have the ball fields and vacant farmlands, and the Route 9 corridor as well on the west side of the property. Go to my next exhibit. I think this is A4. A4 is entitled Overall Site Layout Sheet C-301. It's the exact same sheet in your site plan package. We've colorized it for ease of description this evening. Again, consistent with the prior exhibits, north is to the right side of the page. You can see Route 9 in the north-south direction on the west side of the property, Spring Hill Road running in a north-south direction along the east side of the property, Jake Brown Road along the south side of the property, and we're bordered to Schulmeister along the north side of the property. As I mentioned, and I'll point up there, we have three distinct lots. Lot 1A is where the warehouse building is on the south side of the property, and I'll call it the southeast quadrant because all of those heavy-duty striped lines is really the zone boundary separating the two sections of the redevelopment area, as well as the heavy-duty power lines and construction moving towards Route 9 there really isn't desirable. There's also other environmental constraints in terms of streams that run along that area as well. You may recall in the Jake Brown Road South development, we had to handle the stormwater that's coming under Jake Brown Road there. That area that drains through this site comes in there, and there's a significant floodplain area. If you're driving along Route 9, it's about 10 feet higher up along Route 9 as in that lower point of the farm field, and that is part of a flood hazard area that we're designing around and we'll be dealing with the DEP, very similar to what we have done in the prior applications on both Jake Brown South property as well as the golf course property. As part of the development and the proposal for this evening, and I'll start in that southeast corner, which is the Lot 1A, 72 acres. This property, to give you some scale, is approximately 2,600 feet across relative in an east-west direction and approximately 1,400 feet in a north-south direction. With that, we're proposing one warehouse building, 646,800 square feet, inclusive of 10,000 square feet, which would be two 5,000 square foot areas, one to the west and one to the east side of that building. We have a total of 95 loading docks, 49 on the north side and 46 on the south side. So we got, yeah, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll deal further up here. We have the loading docks on the north side as well as loading docks on the south side of the building. There are additional 61 trailer spaces located, some along the south side as well as the north side opposite of the loading spaces. It's encompassing similar type of building relative to height, architecture, elevations, all the same as you've seen, as mentioned in the redevelopment plan. They have to be consistent architecture, same heights. The layout very similar too. We have in each of the four corners of the loading corridors, we have ramps that go into the building. We also have our trash compactors in those locations as well. Both on the east and the west sides where we've located the vehicle parking adjacent to the office areas, which is the small rectangles on either side. With that, we have 335 parking spaces including all ADA compliant stalls, as well as 13 EV electric charging spaces. In regards to that, the parking space is 9 by 18. We have 165 of those spaces on the west side of the property and 167 on the east side of the property. In regards to the drive aisles and things and the access to this facility, main access is coming off the, I'll call it the cul-de-sac or the dead end of the Jake Brown Road that extends from Route 9. So the vehicles will be entering this site, both passenger vehicles and trucks would be located coming off of Jake Brown Road. There is no other access point coming to the site relative to trucks and or passenger vehicles. So there will be no access coming from Spring Hill or Cottrell Road that gets into this site. It would all come from Route 9. All of our tractor trailers, all of our passenger vehicles would have to exit back out to Jake Brown to the intersection of Jake Brown and Route 9. So no traffic. Again, no traffic to Spring Hill Road from this proposal. I just want to make sure that that's clear. There has been a concern raised relative to the circulation around the building. It's the same scenario in terms of geometry that we proposed at the other developments. In terms of where the cars are, 24-foot drive aisles, 9 by 18 parking stalls. In regards to the tractor trailer spaces, we're using 30-foot, minimum of 30-foot drive aisles entering on curves and things. It gets wider than that to handle the vehicles to come in and around. The unique aspect of this one of the criteria due to the redevelopment plan was keeping the dead-ended area of Jake Brown Road 1,500 feet from Route 9, hence why the location of both vehicles and trucks at this location. We also have an emergency vehicle access only, and you may recall from the Jake Brown South project, we had to make sure there was accessibility for emergency vehicles only. There's no public transport, no public vehicles would be able to get there. Also had to be a path relative for bikes and things to that nature to be used to connect over towards the Cottrell Road side and where those residents exist along that to the east side of our development. With that being said, the concerns that we've heard from your traffic comments and your professionals was we'd like to separate the vehicles that are accessing the parking lot on the east side of the site from the trucks. We have that scenario on the circulating around the west side in the loading. They'd like us to complement that. We can look at, and I think we can accommodate, adding a wider lane, I will say, on the south side that abuts only Jake Brown Road right-of-way, which in this area, there's no residential houses in the area, to circulate adjacent to the loading corridor, and we would eliminate the truck parking stalls, the loading spaces on that south side of the building to accommodate that drive aisle. We will have to modify our detention basin some in this area to do so, but I think we can accomplish that and accommodate your professionals in regards to having a separate circulation lane. Another significant item that came up was concern with the residents in terms of screening the development. Now, in this project, in this building, we only have an emergency access as required by your fire official along the, I'm going to call it the southeast corner of the building, and there is a fire lane only that comes into that southeast corner of the building. That distance, and I'll go through that in a minute, is still separated by a forest of approximately 100 and some feet in this location of natural vegetation. We were trying to avoid cutting down more trees and leaving that as is, so our thought process to still provide screening was to put a 6-foot board-on-board fence along there and try to squeeze that in and have some evergreen shrubs as well. That'll grow over time to provide additional buffering over time. In regards to what Mr. Gersberg mentioned was the northeast corner of the open farm field that we have in this location, again, that I'm pointing to, northeast corner of the building, where, I forget the lot number, was it lot 6 mentioned before? Lot 6 that fronts on Spring Hill Road, that in this corner, in a diagonal direction towards our building, yes, there is not 3 football fields of forest, and hence the proposal of having a berm. Now, as discussed with your professionals and your redevelopment ordinance, there's a requirement if you're adjacent to a residential property to have that berm to have a 50-foot width at the base, which we would angle it up, and as Mr. Gersberg mentioned, landscape on either side, put a tree on it. And I have another exhibit to get into the topography, but I want to finish out this description so that everybody can see. So we're talking about putting a C-shaped berm in the northeast corner of Lot 1A to accommodate that screening. We are talking about having additional fence and evergreens along this emergency access roadway to get into that property to screen to the residents. I want to point out when I get to Lot 1B, to the north of 1A, which is where we're having our next proposed building, we have in excess of 900 feet, 3 football fields of natural vegetation separating those homes on Spring Hill Road and our nearest development. That part is where we're talking about not needing to cut down more trees to provide screening when you have 3 football fields separating it. And that's where, just for clarity and for the public's purposes, why we were saying not the entire area, because it didn't make sense to start cutting down into a forest to add that in that location. It does make sense to add the berm in the location on 1A. So I hope that makes sense to what we were talking about and what some of the comments that we heard before I got up. I want to go into the access and the development on 1B now, which we're calling Warehouse 2, which is located on the property, as I mentioned, 1B. 1B is 33.5 acres, and as I mentioned, it fronts along Schulmeister Road. Along there, we would have 2 access points into our development off of Schulmeister Road, one to the west and one to the east. That building is essentially set up as only having loading spaces on the south side, so you would not see any loading occurring along Schulmeister Road. That proposal there is for 150,500 square foot building, and again, that would have a total of 10,000 square foot office in it, 5,000 at the east side and 5,000 on the west side. A couple other items there. We have 20 loading docks along the south side of the building, in addition to 76 parking stalls for your ordinance, with 41 to the east side of the site and 31 on the west side. I know that adds up to 72, but as I mentioned, we're adding the EV chargers, and when you do the math and the credit that you give us for the additional spaces, it's 76 to be compliant with your redevelopment plan. There was a comment by your planner relative to, if you could go down a hair, pan down. The 7 parking stalls that head towards Schulmeister Road was into the setback there. We're going to reconfigure that so we don't have any deviation from the setback requirement for parking. But we're going to maintain the total numbers to be compliant with the ordinance. Again, in terms of drive aisles, we have at least a 30-foot drive aisle for the tractor trailer circulating in and around the site. It does get wider over the curves, to over 40 feet. In the areas of where the parking for the cars, again, with 24-foot drive aisles, 9 by 18. We do have bike racks on this site plan coming in. Yes, we need a deviation because of the numbers were kind of large and didn't make sense, but we are providing the EV stalls and the bike racks in addition to that. So again, the idea here is 2 buildings. They're not connected. Building 1, Warehouse 1 is coming off of Jake Brown Road. Warehouse 2 is coming off of Schulmeister Road. And again, the traffic for Building 2 has to go out to Schulmeister Road. It's signed there. No tractor trailers would be coming from the east. So all of our traffic, again, would be going in and out of Schulmeister towards Route 9. In regards to utilities, we're going to be bringing utilities to each of these buildings. Most of them will be coming off of Jake Brown Road for the Warehouse on 1 and off of Schulmeister for Warehouse 2. In regards to stormwater management, again, we're dealing with the DEP for all of the permits relative to flood hazard, stormwater management, and wetlands, et cetera. That is in process now. We do not have those permits yet, but again, in terms of following the same design procedures that we've used over the other projects, we don't have a concern on obtaining those permits. It's just a matter of time. Relative to stormwater management, We have a constructed wetlands basin, 7 infiltration basins, 4 bioretention basins, 4 porous pavement basins, all in compliance with the DEP's new green infrastructure requirements. In total, on all of the plantings there, the bioretention basins, there's 4 different basins that require in excess of 1,600 plantings, and the wetlands and the size of that wetlands basin along the north side of Building 1 requires 15,233 plants. So a total plant material, and Mr. Gersberg mentioned he was glad to hear that we're planting so much to replenish the forest that we have here. 16,929 plants are part of our plan set that's going in that has to be approved by this board as well as the DEP and is required as part of their green infrastructure to meet those numbers. I did mention the lighting, similar 30-foot high light poles around the lights, around the parking lots in accordance. We do have a deviation very similar to the last application in regards to being just under 1-foot candle. We're not concerned with any glare or anything going off-site. It's areas of the truck parking that in the back of it we have like 0.8 versus or 0.6 versus required to 0.8 and a 1-foot candle. So again, relative to the safety, it's not a concern and or a nuisance to our neighbors. I believe that's all the facts and figures I was going to get into. I did receive letters from your fire official. It did come today, I believe, Vina. And we don't have any concerns with that. A very similar letter to the one that we had for the gun club application. That's not a concern. We also got a letter from your Shade Tree Commission, and again, a similar response. The facts and items that he has, we do not dispute, and again, we intend to comply through the redevelopment process to address those items. And then lastly, we have a very nice letter from the professionals in regards to the application that identify numerous waivers and deviations that are similar to what was in the prior application. And again, I can go through those in regards to what we're going to comply with so we don't have concerns. And then the things that I forgot to mention, they can bring me back to. But in regards to the parking in the buffer I mentioned, we're going to eliminate that and comply with that requirement. It was an oversight on our part. Screening of the trash enclosure, similar to where these are located in the corners of the building, in the courtyards. One portion of the trash enclosure would be screened, but not all 4 sides, so we'd be requesting that deviation. But again, as I mentioned, the separation and location of where those items are from the surrounding uses and neighbors, it wouldn't be visible. In regards to the 2% usable space, I can give you a table that shows we do comply with that. In terms of the architectural requirements, we will be complying with that as well in your letter. I'm just going off your list on page 6. In regards to the signage, again, our intent is to be compliant. We have 2 signs that we would be having. The open space of 25% canopy, meaning tree coverage. I will go through that, and then again, because we have to find locations of where our plantings are, our intention is that, but it's kind of an item relative to what's planted day 1. So again, I'll work with Vina on that, but our intention is, based on our replacement requirements, that we would comply. We would be requesting the deviation on the islands within every 20 parking stalls. Again, as I mentioned previously, we're consolidating where the parking is to minimize the disturbance, and then landscaping at the perimeter to shield that off. And as I mentioned, those islands relative to impervious coverage and where we are relative to meeting the stormwater management regulations, we're well within the limits of what is required by the DEP for recharge and those items. In regards to a 6-foot-high solid screening, again, I believe that's relative to the trash enclosure. We have that on a portion of the site, but not the entire section based on where it is, so we'd be requesting that variance. I think that's mentioned twice. Tree canopy mentioned already. Walking paths, again, this would only be for private walking in and around the development. but I believe that would be compliant, and a waiver not being required, as long as it's allowed to be a private walking path for the tenants slash employees there. Irrigation, again, the same type of waiver where, yes, we're not doing the full recycled, but we're using native plants and want to use a drip irrigation system in the areas that would be most visible to the public at the driveways and locations like that. And then we understand we have an obligation to make sure our 16,000 plants stay alive. So we'll assure that, but we would be requesting the waiver from the recycled water. In regards to the bike racks, we are providing them. I think 89 are required, which is where we're only providing 20. But from a practical standpoint, we don't foresee that many bikes. That's why we're requesting that waiver. In regards to landscaping in the parking, it may require the design waiver based on how you calculate it, because we have it around the perimeter of the parking lot, and I think you want it internal to it. Internally, we would be requesting it, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page on how that's calculated, because that would be a waiver, because I don't believe we're going to make 20% of the gross parking area. The foot candles of lighting, I mentioned, we're at 0.6, where the minimum is 1, and the average of 0.8, we're at 0.6. And again, where that is located, as the professional engineer oversaw this, I'm not concerned from a safety standpoint due to where that deviation occurs, and respectfully request that design waiver. I think that is all of the major items, and I am sure based on this letter, there's things that I probably forgot, and I won't touch on traffic either. I did mention I wanted to hit a couple distances, and I'm going to pull up another exhibit, which this is the one I keep in the bag, so I didn't email it before, so you don't have it, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to put it up here, and maybe I turn it around if the public wants to see it, but I want to explain it first to the board. I'm up to A5, I believe.
Correct.
This is A5, entitled Residential Separation Exhibit, Sheet 1 of 1, dated 12/5/2022, prepared by Bowler Engineering. Again, north will be to the right side of the page, and what you're seeing here is the aerial and the proposed improvements overlaid on it. This is Warehouse 1 and Lot 1B. Or 1A, excuse me. You can see 1A lot outlined here, where Jake Brown Road is along the south side of the building. You got Cottrell along the east side, and you see the property line for the 1A lot. To the north of that is 1B. I want to point out, as I mentioned in my direct testimony before, was the high point of the site is in the northeast corner of the site. There's an area on Cottrell where there's one house that sticks into our site outlined here. I mentioned we have about 900 feet of property along Cottrell, about 700 feet up from the southern end of that. You can see one lot. High Point's right behind that house. It then drops down. In the area of where the open farm field is, that's an elevation approximately 69, and that lot 6 starts to actually is the area that comes and starts to get lower. Cottrell Road is at a high point also, right in that location where that house is, and drops down. In the area of the residential home on Lot 6 is about elevation 60. As I mentioned, we're up at 69, about 9 feet higher. If we end up doing the geometry of the berm that I talked about, you probably get up about 6 feet higher than that. So if you did that math, you're going from 69 up to 75. And then you throw a 6-foot high board-on-board fence, you're up to 81, and they're sitting down here at 60. Yep. So if you can envision the distance from the corner of our development to their residential home is 1,010 feet. And if you have a high point at about 1/3 point, that's 22 feet higher, and you're talking about a building at elevation, finished floor 53, and you throw that elevation of the height of the building on top, which is 46, your angle of view would go shooting over top of it because of that distance and because of the angle and where we're locating that berm. And I mentioned a berm that we would like to locate is in the C-shape geometry right up in the open field in the northeast corner of that, which would provide the maximum impact. Here we go, right up in here. So just to translate what I showed on A5, this location of house on lot 6 to the corner here is 1,010 feet.
Is that from the corner of the rear of the property or the corner of the house?
That's from the corner of the house.
Okay.
Right here, on this property here. That's what I measure to.
Show it on the large screen.
Sure. From this point up here to here, 1,000 feet. This is at elevation per the survey, 60 plus or minus. This is at 54. And then when you start looking at this spot being up at 69, and then throwing another 12 feet on top of that and that angle, that's why the screening would be provide a barrier to the visibility of the roof.
So what would they see from the corner of that house? Typically.
I mean, first you got about 100 feet of trees that we're not touching in this area. So if you can see through that, and then on top of that, you're going to have evergreen berm, a berm, vertical berm, and then trees planted that'll have evergreens that'll be year-round, and day one with a board-on-board fence. Great. Board-on-board fence on top. So you're going to, if anything, you'd see that. And then beyond that, you should see sky. Yep. And in the long, and again, I just wanted to point out where we were proposing the fence on the southeast corner along the emergency access road here, along the southeast corner of the building that accesses the parking lot. To give you an idea, you have about 130 feet of green space in this direction, existing vegetation. And what we're talking about is, again, there's no traffic driving and utilizing that road, but we would put a fence along there, so you'd have day one screen and some landscaping right up along that roadway. I didn't intend or suggest cutting down trees to get closer to the residential home that's in that southeast corner. And that's how we would hopefully, again, intend to comply with the screening requirements and provide buffer, natural buffer, as well as a physical barrier to the operations of the facility.
Let me just do it this way, so it might be easy.
This one. Yeah. So right here, again, on this exhibit here is over 900 feet. This is where we're talking about the backside of lot 6 to our building, and what's in between is a natural forest. We would not be touching that, and our development is beyond that. I didn't point out, and I forgot to, is that we are providing buffering and screening as required by the redevelopment plan along our frontage between our building and the Schulmeister Road there, and that is bermed up, again, in accordance with the requirements of the redevelopment plan. Our intention there is to comply with the requirements of that buffering from Schulmeister into our site for warehouse number 2. And I believe that's everything I wanted to hit on direct.
Thank you.
Okay. Gina and Rakesh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a review letter, again, a joint memo prepared by our office and Vina's office dated December 5th. Much like the other project, we have had extensive meetings with applicants, professionals to go through our comments, and I'm pretty comfortable that we have a fairly significant memo, about 28 pages or so, with lots of comments, which I believe the applicant should be able to comply with without a lot of deviation. One thing I didn't hear, Keith, in your testimony was regarding the improvements along Schulmeister and exactly what the applicant will be constructing.
In regards to that, the roadway improvements with the additional widening, we are providing, we are providing the right-of-way along there, and in terms of the widening necessary for our circulation to get in and out. And our traffic engineer has some info in regards to the roadway geometry within that.
Okay, so we'll get that from Mr. Steckler's testimony. And then real quick, just to go back to warehouse number 1, in the southeast corner. One of the things that we had talked about was possibly looking at maybe maybe providing some berming and increasing landscaping in that area. Is that, are you proposing now, instead of that, proposing fencing and maybe some additional landscaping on the adjoining property owners?
So, yes, correct. What we had mentioned was adding some additional landscaping, as Mr. Gersmer mentioned, along those homes that exist there, to do it right adjacent to their home. And we would work with the professionals as well as the neighbors. But in regards to trying to, I'll say, accommodate circulation along the south side of the building as one of the concerns, and maintaining the emergency access, what we're trying to squeeze within this area, again, what I thought would be day one solid buffer besides the existing vegetation would be a fence, and then supplementing with some evergreens that would be year-round.
Okay. And the fence you're proposing along the top of the berm for the basin there?
It's truly not a berm in this location that I recall. I think it starts to drop down into our basin. So that's where we get some challenge relative to the access point for the fire official coming in and trying to berm much higher without cutting more trees. So we're trying to accommodate that with fencing and landscaping without cutting more trees down.
Okay. And as I stated earlier, there's numerous detailed comments that we have, which we've gone through with the applicant, and I think we should be able to address those should the board act favorably. But I am happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, Mr. Polakasher, you're okay with that?
We're comfortable with that, yes.
Okay, Vina, anything to add?
Keith, I recollect you saying that you will eliminate the first deviation on the table, right? So you will, the stormwater structures that are within the buffer, you will eliminate that deviation,
You know,
correct?
I didn't see the comment in the letter. I know we talked about it, and I thought you maybe forgot about it. But if you didn't, then there was a pipe that discharged right there. And if you said the pipe was, and again, I know you said stormwater structures, it is a pipe, and it discharges, and it pretty much has to be there. It is below the roadway, and I don't think will ever be seen. So if it is a deviation, and if you call that the deviation, then I would request the deviation be granted for only that location. I'm not asking to put any detention basin or structure related to the basin in it. It would only be the pipe that's, and again, there's a natural channel, unfortunately, that exists there that we have to go back to and hit.
It's really the outfall structure,
Yeah,
right?
it's
The
the
pipe, the pipe is subsurface.
The discharge of the
Right.
pipe, not even
Right.
outfall structure.
Yes,
It's
outfall,
not the-
yeah.
It's not the outlet control structure.
Right.
So it is a deviation. And
Yeah.
then the one thing I noticed that our table missed is the employee parking on Shoemeister. The employee parking is 65 feet from the right-of-way, and the ordinance requires 75.
So Vina, I think you didn't miss that.
It's not in the
Number
table,
one,
it's,
no parking within buffer area. And I said, I'll correct that. If
So
we're on
you'll
the
fix
same
that.
page.
Yes.
I
it's
been a
late.
long night. But yes,
tomato, I
I think
say
you found
tomato.
it, and I think I will correct it. There'll be
Because
no
I thought you
deviation.
said you would eliminate that, so.
Yes, that's
Okay.
the one I will eliminate.
And the last thing, so the architectural elevations for Gun Club side showed the wall signage. However, this buildings, I didn't see any area. So would you comply with the redevelopment plan so
Yes.
that no variance is required? I would hate for you to come back to the board just for signage.
Our intention is to comply, and if somebody actually wanted to get a variance, I doubt they would, but they would have to come back in front of a board, and we'll discourage.
It's
that
all
to
about
do
the
so.
application fees.
Yes.
That's all. I'll reserve my comments for the planner.
Okay, that's it. Okay, board members, any questions or comments?
Chairman, Go ahead.
There's the parking lot on Route 9. That's the parking right, the gravel lot there? What's going on with that? Is that getting deleted? Is that going to stay there for the residents?
I'm not proposing to do anything to it with this application.
Right now, we're doing some construction to the area, so that's why it's been closed off, and we're working with conjunction with the town officials who've requested us also to do that. So we're working on that. Ultimately, if we develop the front parcel, we may come back, and we're not sure yet. There's been talk with the township that they also may want to move people to some of the other lots, and that may not be a good spot for it. So it's not determined as of yet at all. As of right now, it's closed really for maintenance and other things we have to do there, but it's not. There's been no official determination. We're working with the town officials on that.
I think Mr. Lenning can add more to that because Mr. Lenning, myself, have been working to clear the site. Also, before he speaks in, the redevelopment agreement had language in there that the township would need 3 years to come up with a plan. So we wanted to decide if we need the commuter parking lot or if we need to locate it elsewhere where we could have more parking.
So, sorry. As the Director of Public Works, I oversee the parking authority. And with this project going on, they needed to close a lot for some renovations and storage and stuff like that. The parking authority identified a paved, fully improved parking lot, which is located right in front of the Home Depot lot. Residents that utilize that lot used to have to pay to park there, but we eliminated the fees. So now they have a lit, safe parking lot that they could utilize while this project's being developed and until we finalize another location.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lenning. Mr. De Palma?
Mr. Kay, I have a question on the bigger building, right? So it's is that one? Building one. Building one. So I guess that's the south and the southeast, right? So the parking. So that parking, you were saying that you're going to be eliminating the stalls for tractor trailers, and it's just going to be a right-of-way, and there will be no trucks parked or idling. It'll only be really cars, cars that are parked in that lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about eliminating these truck stalls to have a drive aisle isolated for vehicles only to get down to this drive, to the parking lot on the east side of the building, so that the corridor for the trucks would be trucks only.
Okay.
So doing that, that's where we're talking about. It would essentially be the same access point. We'll have to work on the geometry of that entry, come down through here.
So you'd be eliminating the truck parking.
Yes.
And it would really just be like a loading and unloading zone. So there wouldn't be, okay.
Yep.
And then everything else it's that southeast, that lot is just all
cars,
passenger cars.
Yep.
Okay. So all of the truck parking will be away from the residential.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other board members? Questions for Mr. Cahill?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay, shoot.
Mr. Cahill, will there be a dedication to Spring Hill Road for the county?
No.
No dedication, okay. Is any part of your property going to be draining onto Spring Hill?
Keith, can I just, we actually did have a meeting with the county the other day. I think Mr. Seckler was on that as well, with some of the some of the folks from your office, and I think there is going to be, there will be a dedication to the
Yeah, I'm
county.
sorry, there is a dedication along Spring Hill Road.
You're getting too high up in the bowler stratosphere to be at
include me
those
in the call.
menial meetings.
Sorry, clarification, there will be a dedication along Spring Hill. Oh,
So the Spring Hill Road's a county roadway. So the county has an ultimate right of way that they have planned out. I'm sorry, ma'am. See, they have an ultimate right of way width. That they're not necessarily saying to widen the road and all that, but they're saying that there's a certain amount of property that they want the applicant to give to the county for their purposes for any kind of future work that they may need to do in the right of way. But the applicant actually has to go to the county for approval, and that'll be handled as part of that process.
And to answer your question, there's a small portion of existing area. I'm going to refer back to A5. That's in the undeveloped section. There's a small section in there that drains that way, but any of the proposed improvements, none of the proposed improvements or the drainage patterns, as I mentioned, there's a high point in here. Everything that's being impacted, none of the water that doesn't go to Spring Hill Road already will change, and we're not adding any because it's naturally the drainage pattern today. So we're not changing any of the drainage patterns that go to Spring Hill Road currently because it's natural land and we're not touching it.
But yeah, the reason I asked, because the intersection of Spring Hill, Jake Brown, and Cottrell has been a nightmare over the years, a lot of drainage problems, and that's the only reason I asked. So if you're not in negotiations, you're not.
Yeah, I mean, the good news on all of it is all of this, the improvements that we have on our site is away from the drainage areas that go to that area.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board members? Mr. Lenning?
In the previous project, Jake Brown South, I had mentioned that intersection that we just identified, and I believe you guys agreed to make improvements to that in the past. So there will be improvements to there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lenning. Anybody else? If not, I'll open it up to the public for questions regarding Mr. Cahill's testimony only.
My name is Kelly Gonzalez. I live at 72 Spring Hill Road. First topic, and you say you deal with the commuter parking lots. Not really why I was here, but since I was talking about it, that lot does get used a lot, even though it's just gravel. I don't anymore. I actually used to use that lot. It's very convenient. It's right there. It gets always full. If you drive by there, you know a ton of people park there. For the residents who lived on that side of Old Bridge, on that side of Route 9, it is more convenient to park there versus the temporary lot that they're using at Home Depot, or even going to Old Bridge Park and Ride, having to make that U-turn, go in there. When the residents, there's a lot of residents in that area actually use that. And if, I don't know if you own that land or not, if they could actually pave that or do something with down the road, that would probably actually make residents happy that you actually paved that and made a bigger commuter lot there, hopefully free of charge as well, besides the permit that we pay. That would be nice. But I'm just saying that was my 2 cents on that. It is, I hope you guys, if you're deciding to move that somewhere else, I hope it's not, where the residents on that side of the road have to go far, make U-turns, deal with Route 9 traffic. That lot was so perfect. If they could expand on that and pave that, that'd be great. But, all right, so if you could actually move that map up to show Spring Hill Road. The other way. Oh, sorry, move it down, I'm at Spring Hill Road. Okay.
Do you need a pointer?
Yeah, I'll show you. Okay. Can I steal your pointer?
Yeah, it's
Oh, it's
so
tricky?
good luck.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, let's see what we got going on here. All right, so this is my property right here. You guys can see it, it's number 72. So the house that's right here is my other neighbors that are here. We have the open lands right here, another house here. So from my property, where my house is, I actually sit up higher. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My house actually goes up on an incline. I have the longest driveway on that road. So as you go up, so this property right here, when Bob and Linda farmed it, I actually saw their pumpkins. My request is also, you're looking for a spot to plant those 10,000 trees. We gonna fit a lot in? Okay, because that right there, that little bit of trees right here, so when we drive down that road and we look, obviously it's fall time, there's no leaves on the trees. I mean, if you know where my house is, Old Spine and Wellness, when that was built, I didn't know that was being built, but their back end shows up. I see their sign on Route 34 in my backyard. And if you were to think, you were like, oh, your house is so far, how could you see that? No, I see their light up sign. So my concern is, with not enough trees in that corner right there, that open lot, we're gonna be able to see. So we're looking, the big thing is, we don't wanna see this. We don't wanna see it at all. I don't wanna see the lights. My brother's a truck driver. He goes to warehouses in Monroe. He already told me the goods, the bads, and the ugly about it. Also, are you guys ensuring that we're not gonna see those lights? So you're not ensuring it?
It's not required, no. Not part of the, we're meeting the redevelopment ordinance requirements.
Oh, you mean the lights on
I can't
The
tell.
lights, like, are we gonna be able to see?
Yeah, we comply and actually have lower light levels than what's required by the ordinance.
Okay. I like your order and stuff and your lingo and stuff, but I wanna know, with the berms and the trees, you said the biggest thing for us residents is that we don't see it, right? We're asking you, if you're looking for a spot, load that property up with those trees that are gonna see it. Our biggest complaint is, listen, township's gonna build those warehouses no matter what. We're asking, we don't wanna see it, okay? So if you could plant as many trees on that side, we are thankful that you're not taking down
We can do that.
very many.
We're gonna do the best we can.
But
we hear you.
we want to be, and also, I want to know, is there going to be like a cutoff? Is there like a township thing on that with the reversing of the lights and, the noise that trucks make when they back up? Is there like a cutoff time?
Well, there's a noise ordinance that will comply with.
Yep. And then,
One at a time.
Is
You got
it-
the mic.
I'll
You
just
got
point
the
out,
mic.
I'll just point out, you got on the east side of the building, they're cars. It's the south side, okay, so, and this is over 1,000 feet over to.
Sir, it could be
to that.
2,000 feet. I could hear Route 9 traffic,
Exactly.
okay? So my question is, what is the ordinance? Maybe somebody in the room could tell me, what is the ordinance on those trucks coming in and out and reversing? At 11 o'clock at night, am I gonna be able to hear this? The trucks.
There's a
Cool.
state
New Jersey
ordinance
State,
for
there's a New
noise.
Jersey State noise ordinance, which the board's council is familiar with, that we'll have to comply with. Is it
Do you
state-
know do you know the cutoff? I'm just asking.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a well-known, it's a state statute.
Okay.
Every application has to comply. Good news is that the building will actually be a buffer to Route 9.
Nothing's a buffer to Route 9, but it's all right. The other question is, I know you guys, so I wasn't understanding, so the turnabout that you have on Jake Brown Road, does that mean that no trucks, no cars, let's say the employees are gonna be able to continue down Jake Brown Road to get to where it meets Cottrell
Correct.
and Spring Hill? So it'll be blocked off at some point?
Correct, and that was at the prior approval, and we're just complying with that at this.
Okay, and then on the Showmeister, where it comes out, obviously Spring Hill Road, it's not gonna be widened where the trucks could get down that road, right?
Nope, we have a requirement that the traffic from our facility that fronts Schulmeister go back to Route 9. So they gotta make a left out and go to Route 9.
Okay,
On the exhibit now, the trucks that exit here have to go left, and the
Okay.
same here, they have to go left. They gotta go to Route 9. Not allowed to make a right turn.
perfect. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, in case they wanna point.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was up here before, Barbara Hayes, and my concern basically is the noise.
Can't hear
When
you.
they're doing the construction on Route 9 that they were doing last summer, the construction equipment backing up woke me up at 6:30 just about every morning. So this is going to be in my backyard till I move, right? Is that what you guys are saying? I'm going to listen to trucks backing in all night long? Yes?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Am I going to hear your trucks backing into your facility all night
I mean,
long?
we're going to comply with the state statute, noise
What does that
ordinance.
Well, that's really,
That actually is the answer.
it's the only answer. They have to comply with the ordinances. And
So what is the ordinance?
I'm not saying you're lying, sir. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's
Well, that
not
is the
answering
actual
the
answer.
question.
What is the ordinance? What is it? So you know you're
Mr. De Palma, can
complying
you-
with it, but you don't know what it is.
We don't have it in front of us, but we know we're going to have to comply.
Yeah, the state statute is that between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., the decibel levels at the property line, the residential property line, can't be greater than 65 decibels. And then between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., it can't be greater than 50 decibels.
And if it is, what do I do about it?
That would be a matter for the,
He says enforcement.
yes, that was just going to say, that would be a matter for law enforcement and code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
The police calls code enforcement. Yeah, okay, I'm sure.
No, so-
We going up against millions of dollars.
No, well, similar to if someone was having a loud party or gathering past a certain time, the police would come out.
I was up here before. My question is on this berm that you're building, exactly how tall will it be above ground level? Not above sea level, but above ground level?
Yeah, I mentioned
I
it.
wasn't clear on that.
Sure, because it is slope, but at the property, can you pan down? Right in this area.
Right.
As I mentioned, it's going to be a 3-to-1 slope going up. It'll be 6 foot in terms of earth, and then a 6-foot-high fence on top of it, so it'll be 12 foot.
Sure. So it's going to be
With
12
the fence.
12 feet high with the fence?
With the fence, yep.
And then is the vegetation, the trees planted going to be eventually
It'll grow over
taller?
time, yeah.
And how tall is the warehouse?
It's 46 feet.
So a 12-foot high fence is going to block a 46-foot
And
high
as I
warehouse?
mentioned, where you're located,
Right.
you're below that point.
Not when
by
I'm sitting on my balcony with my cup
22
of coffee
feet.
looking out. It's on the second floor. I'm just trying to get this clear in my head, exactly what I'll be looking at when I wake up in the morning. So I will see this warehouse.
I don't believe you will. I
I'm
think
20
you're
feet
gonna
up in
see
the air.
top
when
of
I'm
a
sitting in-
fence
I'm
and
sitting on
land.
I'm sorry, it's a 12-foot high fence blocking a 46-foot high warehouse, and I'm 20 feet up in the air, sitting on my balcony.
It's just a matter of geometry, sorry. But
Right.
that's why I think.
Plantings.
Top of a fence and then sky beyond it. That's my answer.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Lydia Maselli, 59 Spring Hill Road. First, I'd like to echo all of the sentiments of my fellow neighbors. Miceli. Can you just elaborate on that C-shaped berm and what that means? I'm Lot 8, so I'm just trying to figure out 8.
Over here?
I can't see, right there, that little white, rectangular looking.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to understand when you say the berm is going to be C-shaped, what that means to my backyard.
Well, your backyard ends here, which I'd say is approximately, you got about 200 feet of trees before you hit the clearing.
Okay, but like.
And then the fence and the berm is sweeping behind your house in this area.
You're going to bring it completely around, so, okay. And then just consideration, obviously, for the trees, like some of my fellow neighbors said, right, things that are deciduous will obviously die over the winter, so keeping them maybe more evergreen would be really helpful to keep that aesthetic,
On the berm,
On the
yep,
berm.
our
The berm-
proposed.
the berm will always be Absolutely. Do we know how long the development is supposed to last?
Construction,
Construction?
18, 12.
I generally construct in less than 12 months.
Okay. And the berm will be up before the construction?
We'll agree to do what we did for the Jake Brown South, which is we put up the berm without vegetation at the beginning, so it gives a blockage, and then then once the season comes in, and we're toward the end, we then landscape on your side and our side, not just our side, the visual for us, but we'll landscape on your side as well.
So Ephraim, when you put the berm up initially, is the fence going to be there as well? Or are you just going to do the berm and then later do the fencing and the greenery?
I'll say this, if I can, if it doesn't have to move, sometimes these things
Yeah.
move, so we put up a temporary one
Yeah.
And then move it, but if I can, I will 100% try.
Okay.
I can't commit to that, but trust me, the happier the neighbors are, the happier I am.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that.
Okay. And then I think I heard earlier, maybe some consideration for a landscaping allowance for the residents. One more question, just relative to the landscape and the plantation plan. I mean, clearly there'll be plantation on both sides of that berma. The maintenance of that, it's, okay. All right, I think my fellow neighbors covered everything else for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Hello, Carolyn Smuldgen again. Oops. Sorry. I agree with Kelly Gonzalez about putting more trees in the areas that are open right now, the open fields, because no matter how much you think you're going to be blocking the noise from Route 9, you're not. I've been living there for 35 years, okay? I've been listening to Route 9 all that time, and I'm going to continue to hear it. Now, on top of it, I'm going to have trucks, even up till 10 o'clock at night. You know, I come home from work, I'm tired, maybe I want to go to bed early. I'm going to be listening to trucks backing up. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to smelling the diesel from the trucks. I'm not looking forward to having the glow of the lights from above, because you get that from Route 9, why wouldn't you get it from this warehouse? If you're going to put up a berm, you need to put a berm so that the people across the street where I am don't have to see this warehouse either. Because I'm on the other side of Spring Hill from Lot 8 and from Lot 7 and 6, and I see this small little area of open field. That's what's across the street from my house. I don't want to see, you know, that's got to be filled in, or a berm has to go up there so I don't have to look at it, my neighbors don't have to look at it as well.
If I may just stop you, do you have a direct question? This is a question session, and the comments are going to be reserved for the end of the meeting.
Okay, here's the, well, I've been upset about this whole thing ever since I got the notice that wasn't even sent to me legally, because I got a certified letter in the mail, and there was no portion of the card to be signed. I don't know where that card is. I didn't sign for my letter from the attorneys. But on going back over to Schulmeister Road, where the baseball fields are you guys aware that you have people that park along the side where the warehouse is going to be when the baseball games are going along? And those people are going to have the ability to still park there?
What is the direct question?
The question is, you have parents taking their kids on Schulmeister Road for the baseball games, okay? They park along Schulmeister Road. They use whatever parking space is there, but they also come along Schulmeister Road. Is that going to be a problem once this warehouse comes in? Where are they going to go? Are they going to be able to park in their parking lot? See, having been there for 35 years, I know these things happen.
No, I mean,
We're giving a dedication to the township to have the road do what they want with there, and then it's your land.
To
On
do-
our land, we're doing a buffer as required by the ordinance, so.
I don't think we should be penalized for the fact that it sounds like people are parking on our land.
They'll be parking on the town's land.
They've been doing it for years. That's what I'm saying. that they're
It's the
used to
town's
doing it.
issue, it's really not this project.
Okay, but I'm just letting you know, it will
not-
happen.
It's really not before this board currently, that issue, I don't believe.
All right. And will we be able to get a berm set, that open field?
We're committing to the sea, and then we're going to plant the trees, and then we'll see where it goes. And we're going to plant those trees.
Okay.
In that field.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no one else, we'll close the public portion. And we will, does that conclude your testimony?
I'm done.
Yep, Mr. Steckler.
Okay, and we'll move on to
Mr. Steckler.
Mr. Steckler. And Mr. Steckler, I'll remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes, I confirm.
Thank you.
You have some preliminary comments, is that true?
Yes, I do.
Very briefly?
Yes. This project, we prepared a traffic impact study for. This actually was in addition to the previous larger scale reports that were provided for the earlier applications. This was not included within those developments, however, we built upon that for this traffic study. Similar to the other projects, we utilized the standard trip generation calculations for warehouse development, which gives us both cars and truck traffic trip generation. But as we noted last time, there's a wide range in the amount of traffic these type of warehouses generated. In fact, we provided samples of existing sites that generate between 1/3 and 1/4 of the amount of traffic is what the book says. So again, depending on the tenant, especially when you knock out the high distribution warehouse tenants, you will likely end up with lesser trip generation. I think one of the keys of this development was highlighted by Mr. Cahill. One, it's the cul-de-sacing of Jake Brown Road. So again, all the traffic that touches Jake Brown Road goes back out towards Route 9. That's for the southern warehouse or the larger warehouse. The other warehouse has its access on Schulmeister, but again, both the geometry design of the driveway, as well as obviously the design of Schulmeister, will not allow any of the truck traffic to head to the east or making a right out of that site. All that traffic heads back towards Route 9. As part of the earlier developments, there was a wide range of improvements that were going to be made to a number of the intersections along the Route 9 corridor. Those included DOT applications for improvements at Fairway and Jake Brown Road. As part of this development, in addition to what we've learned through the new traffic signal plans that we're providing for Jake Brown Road, we will be adding what's called channelized right turn lanes from Jake Brown Road. So right now, if you were coming from Jake Brown Road on this side of Route 9, the road is somewhat tilts you kind of to the south, which would make it a little more difficult for trucks to make a right turn to head back north. So what we're doing is we're making a channelized right turn in that area of Jake Brown Road so that trucks have an easier access to get onto Route 9, gives them a little bit easier ability to accelerate. Plus, it allows for a little bit better queuing area in the area of Jake Brown Road. So, again, yeah, thanks. On the exhibit above, generally in the area right at the intersection, but you'll basically, A4, you'll have a much easier access for trucks or even cars to access at that light, and will likely perform the exact same channelized right turn in the opposite direction if you're coming on the other side of Jake Brown Road. That's in addition to the retiming, additional left turn lanes that'll be added to both Jake Brown Road and Fairway Lane as part of the applications we're making to the Department of Transportation. Obviously, those approvals are on their own timeline with the department, requires their approvals as well, but that is what we're committed to making an application for, revising the earlier application for, in order to account for the truck traffic on this side of Route 9 with these two developments. Schulmeister intersection, that one has been obviously recently redone and could clearly support in its existing design the smaller warehouse of the two on this application. So overall, again, we could conclude that the roadway network could support the traffic associated with this development, especially with the improvements that we're looking to make along Route 9 at the intersections.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Again, Brian Proska, Board Traffic Consultant. We reviewed the updated traffic study. It did include this fifth application. It did identify some impacts to Route 9 Jake Brown Road. The traffic study considered a few options at that location. We suggested that the applicant commit to some of those improvements that you just heard on the record. So we'll review that traffic study if the board acts favorably on the application as part of compliance, but we feel comfortable with those options that they presented, that they'll lessen the impact at the intersection. The one mentioned from the redevelopment plan for the warehouse on Schulmeister Road, no access to the east on Schulmeister Road. So as part of compliance, Matt, I guess I'll ask you to confirm that you'll work with the board professionals on the design of those driveways to restrict trucks heading to the east.
Yes, I can confirm.
And again, just for the record, no fulfillment centers or parcel hubs for these warehouses?
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. And that's all I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Vina and Rakesh?
I don't have any questions for the applicant's traffic consultant.
Me neither.
No? Okay, anybody from the board? Okay, we will open it up to the public for any questions regarding this witness-only questions, no comments, just questions for the traffic expert. Thank you.
you. I'm not sure if you can even answer this, but all this truck traffic coming out of these warehouses is all going to come out and basically go up Route 9 north, correct? Very little, I think, would go down to 18. Most of it's going to go Route 9 north. Now, that all funnels down to a single lane. Has that been looked at all? And that's up where it merges to Route 35.
Again,
This goes to one lane.
we took the traffic analysis as far as the furthest traffic signal to the north. Obviously, the area you're talking to is beyond that, where trucks, yes, would have to get onto 35 and then, I guess, work their way to the port if that's the direction that they're
Right. I
going.
mean, currently in the morning now, it's an absolute nightmare to get up that way, and that's where everybody goes to work. And if you're going to add a few hundred trucks into the mix every morning, I just don't see it ending well.
I can't speak for certainty, but I do believe the Department of Transportation has some planned improvements for the Route 9, 35 area. I don't know what's specific to that interchange.
I mean, that's Department of that's years down the road, I'm sure. They don't work
It
that
depends on
fast.
how long it's been in the works already.
Right.
You know, we don't
But
know that.
even when they break ground there, you're talking two or 3 years before anything can be done with that. So in the interim, we're going to be stuck with pretty much a traffic nightmare, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else from the public for Mr. Steckler? I'll close the public session.
Again, we have our architect here. To the
Before we go any further, I just want to just confer with the board. We generally, we end at 10:30 generally.
So, and we appreciate it. We
yeah.
have.
I just want to make sure everybody on the board is comfortable just sticking it out for the
course.
next, you know,
Just so you know, we have-
till the application is
If
complete.
you want to hear from the architect, I think that's 1 minute, and then we have Ms. Keller.
And I'm not, don't get me wrong,
No,
I'm
no, I
not
just
rushing
wanna-
you along. I just want to make sure that
just wanna
everybody's
help you.
comfortable
Yep.
sticking it out. Okay,
Okay?
Very good.
Would you like to hear from the architect?
I'm sorry? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, your name for the record,
Larry Valenza.
and you remain under oath. You remain under oath.
Yes.
Okay, just describe
So
again for
it's
the
going to
board.
sound like Groundhog Day, but again, just for the record, these buildings are the same buildings that have been approved on all the other sites. Same materials, same colors, same application, heights, same treatment of rooftop units for screening. All the things that we've complied with before will be applied to these buildings.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And any questions from, or comments from the board professionals or the board members? Okay, I will open it up to the public for any questions regarding architecture. I'll close it to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on.
Ms. Keller.
Hi, hello again, Chairman, members of the board. Kate Keller, Phillips Price.
And we'll remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, you have some brief comments, thanks.
Sure. So, this is a site that is located on the north side of Jake Brown Road. It is located what is presently known as the, and per the redevelopment plan, the zones are, it's in the Industrial Zone 3 subdistrict. That's where all development is proposed at this time. Warehousing is proposed there. And the third lot is located in the EDO Zone 2, which is along Route 9, Economic Development Opportunity Zone. I would note that at present, prior to the adoption of the redevelopment plan, this site was located in a combination of the R40, the R120, and the EDO3 zones of your zoning ordinance, which permits a variety of residential uses, including in cluster and density transfer options, as well as approximately about 700 square foot of retail and commercial could have been developed. 700,000, did I say 70? Sorry, it's late. 700,000,
What's
about
a zero?
730,000 of retail and commercial could have been developed on the EDO3 portion of the property. So in this case, what's being proposed under the current proposal, really, it takes away it centers development away from the environmentally sensitive areas of the site and concentrates it in a manner that's consistent with the redevelopment plan and all of the goals of the redevelopment plan. I would also note that the redevelopment plan does have very specific buffering, berming, setback requirements that are, for the most part, if not entirely, much more stringent than what was previously contemplated under the underlying zoning for this site. So, just briefly, I'm just going to go through again. We can do it now, or we do it afterwards with Mr. Sordillo, just with the deviations we're looking at this evening. I believe Mr. Cahill set forth that we can comply with the majority of them. So what we are looking for tonight is screening for trash enclosures, which again is really almost technical in nature because of their location and because of the fact that these are really compactors. They're not your typical trash enclosures. We will comply with signage, architecture, open space. We are seeking a deviation related to parking lot islands and the number of them in the site. And again, with trash enclosure, the screening and the solid fencing. Next, we are looking for a few waivers as well. One has to do with the provision of intermediate islands within truck parking areas, the irrigation on the site in which it will be irrigated, but it will not be fully compliant with what the ordinance requires. But again, we are looking to ensure that all of these plantings survive. We will be providing us a number of bicycle racks, but not enough within full compliance with the ordinance, so another waiver is required there. We are also requesting deviations from the ordinance, or excuse me, from the redevelopment plan standard, or excuse me, this is the ordinance standard for lighting. And again, that we're proposing less lighting than what is required because of the nature of this use and the layout of the site. Our engineers and professionals have determined that excessive lighting would not be beneficial to anybody on this site, particularly where it could be seen from outside. And I would also note that, the foot candles will not be extending to any residential property lines. All lighting is concentrated towards the interior of the site where it's needed. The applicant, Ephraim and Mr. Cahill tonight have stated that they're willing to work with the residents to add additional plantings on top of all of the buffers that are required per the ordinance. And I think that all of these, again, this is a large site. This is a site that has a lot of natural buffers that are going to remain. There's several areas where we are proposing additional buffers, and you've heard testimony tonight from both our professionals and your board professionals that the applicant is more than willing to work with them to ensure that we meet and comply with all of the requirements for the site. And just to go back to the basics, this site, what's proposed here complies with the use, complies with setbacks, it complies with the floor area ratio, it complies with everything like that is required for this site. There is the one very technical deviation that we discussed before, which is for the stormwater outflow, which is technically within a buffer area. This is really the equivalent of just a small pipe, and I don't think that it will have any negative impact on the site or any of the surrounding properties. Once again, I believe these deviations are, really follow the same regulations as the bulk C variance, which is that they can only be granted if the board determines that the purposes of the redevelopment plan would be advanced by these deviations from the strict requirements of the plan, and that the benefits would outweigh the detriments. And once again, you've heard this from me several times. Just tonight, you've heard it from me many times over the last few months. But this is a project, this is a proposal that complies with both the letter and the spirit of the redevelopment plan. It is here to take a site that was, where the zoning was determined to, where there was determined that the zoning could be put in place here in order to make this a more efficient and more useful economic development site for the township, and that was really the purpose of the redevelopment plan. We're promoting, sustainable design through protection of environmentally sensitive areas. We have a safe, modern, industrial, commercial complex with appropriate circulation and access that all complies with the redevelopment plan. So overall, I believe that this is a case where the benefits of the effectuation of the plan outweigh any of the detriments of these minor deviations.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Gina?
Sure. Ms. Keller, we've heard a lot about the technical deviations throughout Keith's testimony as well as yours. But I think probably what might also help is the planning aspect of it.
Sure.
And because there are a lot of residents sitting here concerned, or rather wondering why this type of use, right? And this whole process started almost 3.5 years ago when we started looking at the underlying zoning. And I'm sure you have looked at it too. I know in the redevelopment plan, there was a separate section for community impact. And I know you touched upon it a tiny bit. The underlying zone for the entire area was actually split between ED03, R40, and R120. Majority of the area was either ED03 or R40. Have you run some numbers on how much square footage of commercial retail space? Because ED03 zone is pretty, it allows you to put any number of, not any number, an array of commercial and retail uses. And that would mean restaurants, stores, and same thing with the R40 zone. In your past experience dealing with Fair Share Housing Center and COA, what usually happens with residential properties that have remained vacant for so long? And if the underlying zone is R40, can you just explain?
Sure. So I think in both these situations, you have parcels that have remained vacant even after it was initially rezoned to ED03. And that is a property, that's a zone that allows for a wide variety of commercial, retail, light industrial uses all over the map. And then again, you have that next to an R40 zone that has also remained undeveloped. Just based on the existing infrastructure in this area, the fact that it is in the sewer service area, the fact that while there are environmental constraints, there is a developable swath. This is the kind of site that would probably be looked upon, if not immediately, it could potentially be considered for a rezoning for, multifamily, something like that in the future, especially because of the fact that the existing zoning wasn't really seeming to promote development on the site.
Right, and just because it's a residential R40 zone next to another R40 zone, have you looked at the buffer requirements? Because the redevelopment plan requires that there be significant buffer and landscape buffering. But should this have been an R40 zoned property, and there were like hundreds of homes, what would be the buffer requirement? Have you looked at the township's code?
Because it is a residential zone, I don't believe there would really be any buffer.
15 feet to be precise. So I just want, this information is mostly for the residents who are here, because should the township have not worked on a redevelopment plan, probably you would end up with hundreds of homes in your neighborhood, 15 feet apart, with a lot of commercial. And since this property directly abuts Spring Hill Road, you wouldn't really have prohibited traffic from passenger vehicles from coming onto Spring Hill Road. In this instance, the redevelopment plan is written such that at least truck traffic will not be allowed on any residential streets. It's only the employees that will be traversing on the road, and I think that's important for everybody to understand.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, there's no impact to school systems and all the other associated impacts to hundreds, if not thousands, of residential homes.
That is correct, Chairman. And one thing we have to keep in mind, we are towards the tail end of the COA housing period. We are in 2022. 2025 is 3 years away. I'm pretty sure on open lands like these, there will be interveners knocking our doors shortly before the township acts on it. So I think that's the bigger picture we have to keep in mind.
And I would just add, in terms of numbers, just as an estimate, is that typically the minimum density for a site like that is 6 units per acre. And yes, yep.
Settle in for 6 these days.
I know. Yeah. So and this property, what we're looking at, this site here by itself is 132 acres. So if you do the math there, you're looking at potentially a lot of development. And I agree with Vina, where when you have a residential development, you're much less, the buffers tend to be very much reduced as when they're residential next to residential. And also it's much more challenging to control traffic in the same manner. Because, those would be citizens of the town and they have the right, to use public roads in a different way than what we're proposing here for trucks. So, yes, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, very good. Great. Agreed.
And I have nothing further. I just want to get all the technical stuff on the record, and I think, I have nothing further for tonight.
Okay, Rakesh?
I don't think I have anything further for the applicant's planner.
Okay, any of the board members? Any questions for Ms. Keller? Okay, I will open up questions for Ms. Keller's testimony from anybody in the public. Okay, we will close out the public portion of any questions for Ms. Keller.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And that concludes your testimony?
It does, Mr. Chairman.
Any summary?
Nothing further, thanks.
Okay, so prior to Mr. Sordillo's summarization, we will open it up to the public for any comments you may have. No questions at this point to any experts, just comments. And you don't need the pointer this time.
Okay, now I don't. Sorry. Make sure he could hear me. I just want to say, I understand what you're saying about the R40 zone and everything. Trust me, I have a builder that's eventually going to come next door to my property. I'm not looking forward to being back. But it's not that we're completely against the warehouses. We're against the site of the warehouse, against the lights. We know where the property is going to be developed no matter what. Something was always going to come. There's not going to be any open land anymore. But I get what you say about the buffer and everything like that. But if you can make it happen where you give those residents that are on that side of the road those berms, give them those berms, give us the trees. That's what we're asking for. We're asking for, I know you guys are asking for a variance on less lighting. I'm down with that. I think everybody in the room would agree. The residency, the least amount of lights, the better. You want to walk around with a flashlight, we'll be happy. That will make us happy. But just please, those 10,000 trees that you got to replant, just please put them on our side, fill in that gap. From my side door, like I said, trust me, I'm going to miss seeing the pumpkins that were there that I could see when my window was open. I know the farm is done. Linda and Bob are done, basically farming. It's heartbreaking. But if we can make up, these warehouses are going to come no matter what. I'm happy. Jake Brown Road is going to be closed off so the trucks can't come. I don't know if you guys know where my house is. I'm right at the bottom of that hump. When I go to work in the morning, it's radio off, windows down, heat off, can't have it in, and I have to listen and look for headlights in the morning when it's dark. When it's daytime, it's a little bit harder, especially with the hybrid cars. I can't hear them coming. So it's, God willing, everybody who, visitors that come into my house, even if they have to go to Cottrell Road, they always make a right because it's less dangerous to make a right out of my road. So I'm not happy by the traffic, but I know I can't stop this. And just like I said, I'm up against the noise with 18-wheelers and stuff, but yes, it is better than houses. Now with the irrigation, my only thing with that is the new development that's across with however many thousand homes that are in there. If you drive through there, yeah, they fulfilled it. They planted the trees. So many of them are dead. There's so many in that development that are dead. So without the proper irrigation, then everything's just going to die. Yeah, you fulfilled it by planting it, but then in a couple months when it dies, then what happens? You're probably not required to come back and replant something new. Am I right or am I wrong? You don't have to replant anything that's new.
They have to maintain them for life.
Yeah.
For 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have other warehouses that are all living.
I hope so. Listen, we want it nice.
I want it nice.
That's what we're asking for. My neighbors, 2 of the houses back up to it. That, I can't reiterate it anymore. I know you're more of a numbers and whatever Ashley spiel.
Yeah, she's.
You know what I mean? I can't get any more real. It is what it is. But thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful comments. Anyone else from the public? And I have to say, with this application, the public you guys have been very gracious, and I appreciate it, and I think we all do. And we're all residents here too of Old Bridge, and we, we try, that's why we're all volunteers, and we're trying to look out for the best interest of the town. And when these applications come to us, we have an obligation to vet them and make sure it's the best, what we feel is the best, with your input as well. So again, you're very gracious, and I appreciate it. Okay, so with that, Mr. Sordillo?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, as you said, the board here is to make a decision on the applications before it. It doesn't make a decision on what uses are permitted or not, but has to make a decision based upon the proposed development based on the permitted uses. The application before us is a major preliminary and final subdivision application and major preliminary and final site plan. As was testified to, the subdivision is actually a multi-step. It's a consolidation of 3 lots and then a further subdivision into 3 new lots, as was provided in the testimony. And the site plan is for currently just the development of the 2 warehouse buildings on what is currently identified as Lot A and Lot B, with nothing being proposed currently on Lot C, which is in the commercial zone. Any vote of approval would be granting those applications, as I just stated, as well as granting the deviations, variances, and waivers that has been gone through and testified to by the engineer and the planner. There were a number of conditions that were discussed. Right from the start, there was a condition that the applicant agreed to working through the township to contribute plantings to the adjacent resident properties, landscaping subject to reasonableness through the township planning office, as well as installing a fence along the south, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, that's the southwest corner. This is southeast, I'm sorry.
Southeast.
Sorry. Yes, southeast corner of the site. And the applicant further agreed and provided testimony that it was agreeing to build a berm with a fence and plant trees at the northeast corner, thank you, of the Lot A, proposed Lot A site. As well as, and while it might not be in order in my notes, as well as through the testimony provided and in response to comments and questions from the public, the applicant agreed to provide some additional tree planting in that area, as well as the open area in the not to keep saying area, in the area around where the new berm is going to be located and the open area adjacent. The applicant agreed to work on removing of the trailer parking on Lot A to allow for a separate passenger vehicle drive to access Jake Brown Road. I addressed those already. The applicant provided testimony and agreed to reconfigure the parking on Lot B to remove any parking located in the setback near Schulmeister Road. The applicant did agree, excuse me, hold on.
Is that recent? Because they never allow anybody to park.
Yeah, the applicant did agree to construct the proposed berm during the construction phase, though it won't be landscaped until after construction, and we'll look into if it's possible to include the fence at the earliest possible time to help buffer the residential properties from construction. And the applicant agrees, and the conditions will remain, as with the other applications, that the warehouses will not be utilized as a fulfillment center, as not permitted in the redevelopment plan, as well as entering into a amendment or new redevelopment agreement as necessary to be worked out with the township. And the other standard conditions as well, including complying with the township professionals' reports and officials' reports, specifically with regard to the conservation officer, that will be addressed in the redevelopment agreement, similar as addressed in the prior application, and will work with the board and township professionals with regard to compliance with the engineering, planning, and traffic consultant report as well. And I believe that's all I have for conditions.
Joe, one more.
Oh,
That
miss
they will work with us on the roadway improvements on Schumeister.
Okay, yes.
Good. Good. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sordillo, and with that, we'll put this to vote. So do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
By Mr. Lenning, and a second?
I'll second it.
By Mr. Petty?
McIsaac.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was Mr. Petty.
Ms. Cannon?
Yes, but I just want to reemphasize too how important the input that we've gotten from the residents is, and that how this is a real priority, getting those berms up, getting the fence up, getting the plantings on. That's really a number one priority because they live here and we want to make sure that they remain here and are comfortable and happy living in Old Bridge. So I will vote yes.
Mr. Lennick?
Yes, and I agree with Mayor Cannon with her comments.
Mr. De Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Lauer?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
No.
Mr. Petty?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Chair Marucci?
Yes, and again, with a thank you to the residents of Old Bridge.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for
Chairman.
your input. It's don't think it's not important to us. It's well taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to your professionals and your staff. Amazing job. Thank you.
I told you he was. You were just waiting for that. The whole, I'm watching you, the whole meeting, you look like you got, you're completely burnt, and then at the end, you pop up. Okay, before everybody leaves, I have to, I'm gonna get you for this.
What is wrong with him?
Everybody out in the public. I have to open it up for one more, for the Open Public Meetings Records Act, we have to open it up one more time for any comments. Oh, no.
No, I was just going to say, it's any comment, but nothing on any of the applications. It's just general comments.
Okay, thank you. Closed, adjourned.